due to its proven simplicity and comparably easy access, walking is the most undervalued exercise format that exists. As a sweeping generalisation, a lot of people view it as only being suitable as a route to fitness for the elderly or the very out of shape. How wrong that statement is. Both the American Heart Association and the American College of Sports Medicine recommend walking as an exercise intervention that can improve a number of health measures. So there must be some weight behind these claims. Over the next 30 minutes, I will convince you of its value as a workout mode, prove to you it's not just a soft option, and teach you just how to do it correctly to ensure optimum health benefits. Firstly, let's look at a few facts about walking, and I find some of these, well, nothing short of amazing. Race walkers can cover a mile in just over 5 minutes and a full marathon in around 3 hours. Although over 40% of journeys in the US are less than 2 miles, only 10% of these short trips are not made by car. These short trips offer a lot of opportunity for walking. Walking a mile burns just as many calories as running, it just takes longer. Walking has been proven to be an effective treatment for mild depression, reducing symptoms by 47%. Walking can reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes by 58%. And a 2011 study by Erin Richmond showed that brisk walking, at least 3 miles per hour for 3 hours or more a week, lowered the risk of prostate cancer progression. Walking for fitness first gained popularity in the United States in the 80s after cardiologist James Ripp, a graduate of the Harvard Medical School, published details of how beneficial walking was for his patients recovering from heart attack. Dr. Ripp wanted to know if these benefits could be extrapolated to the general population, and so, with a team of researchers, he set up the Rockport Walking Program in Massachusetts. In 1989, when the results were published, they caused quite a sensation in the mainstream media and led to a sudden boom in fitness walking across the nation. The program showed how walking can not only reduce important health parameters, such as high blood pressure and cholesterol, but could also significantly aid weight loss. So let's take a look at what the research tells us. Firstly, let's consider whether walking can be truly effective as a training stimulus. Ripp's study tested 500 people and found that 67% of the men and 90% of the women could reach their target heart rates by walking 4 to 4.5 miles per hour. Dr. Astrand found that during competitive walking, intensity reached approximately 85% of maximum heart rate. It was even higher uphill. In another study, Michael Pollock at the University of Florida's Center for Exercise Science found that middle-aged men who walked at a pace of 3.5 to 4.5 miles per hour for 40 minutes, 4 times a week, had the same cardiovascular improvements as men the same age who jogged for 30 minutes 3 times a week. These walkers didn't reach the same level of intensity as the runners, yet the increased duration and frequency of walking gave the walkers similar aerobic benefits. Now I'll specifically consider the area of cardiovascular disease. A British study by Adrienne Harman looked at the effects on the health of previously sedentary women who walked regularly for 1 year. The women walked on average 2.5 hours per week at about 4 miles per hour. This added up to approximately 10 miles per week and around 70% of maximum heart rate. The results of the study showed enhanced exercise tolerance, improved metabolic response to exercise, and changes in the lipid profile of the blood significant enough to predict a decreased risk of coronary artery disease in the walking group when compared to controls. The conclusion: exercise doesn't have to be vigorous to reduce cardiovascular risk factors. In other words, even strolling can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. One of the most comprehensive and renowned of these studies looked at the physical activity of 17,000 Harvard alumni across 20 years. Ralph Paffenberger and his colleagues concluded that walking can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and reduce the risk of heart attack by 28% or more. You can do this in 5 30-minute walking sessions per week. Now, clearly for a lot of us, weight management, weight loss is the primary motivation. So how effective is walking in this domain? As with any activity, walking uses energy and therefore Adding walking to your daily activity will use extra calories. So long as you don't compensate by eating extra food, regular fitness walking will result in weight loss. Back to Dr. James Ribb, he estimated that brisk walking for 45 minutes per day, 4 times per week, is sufficient to lose an amazing 18 pounds over a year, even without any dietary change. Not surprisingly, if you walk up a steep incline or increase your pace, you burn more calories. For example, if you weigh 150 pounds, that's 68 kilos, and walk 3.5 miles per hour, that's about 5.6 kilometers per hour, on flat ground, you're going to burn around 300 calories an hour. However, if you walked up just a 4% incline, you'd burn 400 calories an hour. And if you walked up a 10% incline, you'd burn a whopping 500 calories per hour. Now, if you pick up the pace as well, say to just 4 miles per hour, 6.4 kilometers per hour on level ground, you'll burn 350 calories in an hour. And that's pretty good for just walking. Race walking speeds of over 5 miles per hour will burn as many as 600 calories per hour. A 12-minute mile pace around 5 miles per hour can burn 50% more calories than a 20-minute mile pace, which is 3 miles per hour. If you're walking faster, you'll not only burn more calories, but you'll also spend less time each day exercising. For example, walking 3 miles at a 12-minute mile pace 5 days per week will save you 2 hours per week over a person walking 3 miles at a 20-minute mile pace. As a weight-bearing exercise, walking can also positively impact upon bone density. Osteoporosis is a major health problem, affecting around 25% of women and 8% of men in the UK, and some 15 million people in the US. Osteoporosis reduces the density of bones and can be life-threatening, since many older people die as a result of complications suffered from broken bones. Several studies have reported that regular walking at moderate to brisk speeds increases bone density. Even just walking for 30 minutes a day. As we discussed in our lecture on stress, exercise can help reduce stress, particularly regular aerobic conditioning, which is precisely what walking is. A walking program has been shown to produce significant gains in self-image, confidence, feelings of well-being, and just reducing depression. In one particular study, A.F. Kramer and his colleagues examined the effect of brisk walking on mildly obese sedentary women and found that walking markedly improved their psychological well-being. So it's easy to understand why Hippocrates is quoted as saying walking is man's best medicine. But where walking really displays its value is in the area of injury, as exercise-related injuries are shown to be much lower than for most other exercise formats. During running, for instance, the body has to absorb impact equal to around 5 times your body weight, but walking causes impact stresses of only around 2 to 3 times your own weight. This means that walking is less likely to produce injuries and is consequently being recommended as a rehab activity for injured runners. Studies have shown that increasing the intensity of a walking program, unlike other modes of exercise, doesn't carry any increased risk of injury. During one 24-week study, not one of the 59 participants who walked 5 days a week at speeds of between 3 and 5 miles per hour sustained a walking-related injury that necessitated consulting with a physician. Another 28-week study compared the injury rate of subjects running versus those doing fitness walking 4 days a week at 80% of their maximum heart rate for 40 minutes. Preliminary results indicated that runners lost 11.1 days of training due to injury, but fitness walkers only lost an average of 1.5 days of training. When it comes to exercise for seniors, it can be argued that walking is the foremost option, although of course every type of exercise has some risk associated with it. However, because walking is a low-impact activity, the risk is lower compared to other forms of exercise such as running. Now, for those of you who might consider walking too easy or maybe even too boring to adopt as a fitness technique, I'm going to give you a challenge. Pop on the treadmill next time you're at the gym and just 2 miles an hour. Set the pace at 2 miles an hour. But every 30 seconds, I want you to increase the speed by 2 miles an hour. Somewhere around 5 miles per hour, you'll naturally want to break into a jog because biomechanically it's more efficient for your body to do this. But at this point, don't. Don't run, just walk faster and see how it feels after about 5 minutes. I'm pretty sure you'll then be convinced of the fitness credentials of walking. Walking obviously uses similar muscles to running, but let's look at how your body achieves the walking motion. Let's work from the upper body downwards and see what's really going on here. The shoulder muscles are used when you pump your arms vigorously while walking. And of course they provide balance as they swing in opposition to your legs. Walking with an upright posture is the most efficient way of locomotion, so pulling in the deeper abdominal muscles is important. Moving a little lower, the hip flexor muscles at the front and top of the thigh are responsible for lifting the leg and swinging through the striding phase of the walk. The quadricep muscles on the front of the thigh are used to extend the knee as the leg is straightened on that reach. Your hips actually will rock side to side as you walk, and the gluteals are responsible for this motion. Now, drawing the leg back and pushing off requires hip extension, which is working into the back of the thigh and also into the gluteals. The tibialis anterior is on the front of the shin, and that'll raise the toes as the leg swings forwards to ensure your heel touches down first. And the calf muscles will provide that upward and forward momentum from the push-off as the heel lifts and you project forward. As you might imagine, though, the real science is going on down in the feet. So let's investigate a little more closely what's really going on here. The heel strike describes the moment the foot first touches the ground and lasts for literally just a split second. This is followed by the early flat foot stage, defined as the point where the whole of the foot is now in contact with the ground and the body's centre of gravity, located in the pelvis, just in front of the bottom of the spine, is now moving forwards through the foot. This is an important stage, as this is where shock absorption takes place, which is a key to preventing injury. The next phase is called the late flat foot, and at this point, this is where the centre of gravity actually passes forward of the neutral position, and subconsciously the whole body structure changes from being flexible to absorb shock to being more rigid, enabling us to propel forwards. Around 2 to 3 times the body weight passes through the foot as the heel raises, something that happens between anywhere from 3 to 10,000 times each day. So it's not surprising that the foot can suffer chronic injury due to repetitive stress. And then the final phase, obviously, the toe off, the point at which the swing begins again. This is where the difference between walking and running is most obvious, since in walking, the next heel strike occurs immediately on the other foot, but a runner will go through what's called a floating stage, describing the moment where both feet are momentarily off the ground. As an experienced trainer, I've been around a while and I'm always being asked questions, all sorts of questions, but these two are really common and they relate to walking. And I've been asked these questions so many times I've lost count over the years. Surely walking can't be as good for me as running. Actually, it's a much healthier choice, as you'll get all of the benefits of running, such as toning the muscles, improving the cardiorespiratory system, strengthening the immune system, controlling blood fats, stress hormones, but without the same risk of injury to your joints. Runners put a strain on their joints, as I mentioned earlier, equal to around 5 times their body weight with each impact, in stark contrast to what we've just learned about walkers. Another question: can walking really help me to lose fat? Without doubt. Although the caveat here is that just like any other form of exercise, the more effort you put in, the better results you'll achieve. To turn a simple walk into a workout, vary the intensity by alternating between a moderate but brisk pace and then some full-out sprint, in inverted commas, pumping your arms as you vigorously move yourself across the ground. Just 30 minutes like this, including 30-second sprints and 1-minute slow pace for recovery, will lead to a serious calorie burn and so will considerably help you in your weight loss efforts. Another question: I'm already running. If I'm running, what's the point in walking? Well, this completely misses the point because unfortunately, walking's not just a simpler, easier version of running. For as we've already discovered, you actually burn more calories walking fast than you do jogging. The two activities are obviously similar and offer some common benefits, but walking also has the bonus of reducing the likelihood of impact injury, as we've seen. It affords an opportunity to still keep your fitness level up by exercising with certain injuries that running might not allow. It also provides the ideal gentle workout mode on the day following a race or a particularly heavy training session. And finally, it allows partners of disparate abilities to exercise together, as the fitter person speed walking will be working hardest if trying to keep up with the less fit person who's jogging. So now hopefully you're convinced. Here's a few tips to get you started. Exercising outdoors, perhaps even in extreme conditions, can dampen your enthusiasm to walk. So a few necessary precautions are needed in such conditions. When temperatures are high, profuse sweating leads to considerable water loss. This reduces the amount of blood returning to the heart, which could result in cardiovascular stress, as indicated by very high heart rates. So on a hot day then, you must take your water bottle with you. When humidity is high, say over about 60%, air temperature is up, the body's ability to dissipate internal heat produced during exercise is impaired. So you may need to reduce your speed or continued walking during these extreme conditions, because it could result in heat exhaustion or perhaps heat stroke. Now, the symptoms of heat exhaustion include weakness, dizziness, headaches, nausea, pale skin, profuse sweating, and a weak but rapid pulse. And the best treatment for this condition is replenishment of fluids and prolonged rest in a cool location. So on warm days, you need to choose light, loose clothing that will allow air to circulate around the body and thus improve the body's ability to stay cool. If the sun's strong, a hat or a visor may be advisable, and a smear of petroleum jelly across the forehead just above the eyebrows will prevent sweat from running into your eyes. By the way, petroleum jelly is also useful to lubricate the tops of the legs and under the arms to avoid chafing. Layering clothing will keep walkers warm at the start of exercise on a cool or cold day. As the body becomes warm, outer layers can be removed before the underlayers become wet from perspiration. If your clothing becomes wet, it should be changed as soon as possible. Dressing advice for cold days is to start with a thin layer of thermal fabric that traps the air but releases moisture next to the skin, followed by a warm synthetic such as a sweatshirt or a fleece. All these layers should allow perspiration to escape, so they need to be non-absorbent and dry quickly. There are many lightweight thermal garments on the market designed for walking, and whilst not essential, they'll help to ensure you're a little more comfortable. Obviously, gloves and a hat are advisable if the weather's very cold, as a lot of heat is lost through the hands and head. In wet weather, you'll chill very quickly unless you protect yourself from the rain. But try to avoid plastic garments, as these don't allow perspiration to escape, so you could end up getting chilled. Windy conditions can significantly alter the intensity of exercise. For example, on a calm day, a 3-mile walk on level ground could be completed in an hour at a level intensity that feels somewhat hard. The same person, however, may find the same 3-mile walk very hard in windy conditions, so adjust your workouts accordingly if need be. You might, by the way, talking about walking outdoors, want to try Nordic walking. Now, this has been around for a while now, but it involves using poles. So you're using your upper body, and that can help to burn a few more calories if it's done correctly. If possible, avoid vigorous exercise in areas with high levels of air pollution. While environmental hazards in highly polluted areas can be reduced by walking in the early morning, late evening or weekends, it might be better to exercise indoors. Bear in mind that at even just moderate altitude, your circulatory system might find it more difficult than usual to deliver as much oxygen to the exercising muscles as is required. Walkers who are accustomed to exercising at lower altitudes will need to decrease their exercise intensity and increase warm-up and cool-down periods at higher altitudes until they've acclimatized to these new conditions. It usually takes weeks to adapt to major changes in attitude. A lot of people ask me about walking shoes. And a walking shoe is a performance product designed specifically for this activity, just as basketball shoes and running shoes are designed for those activities. The mechanics of walking are quite distinct from other sports, and thus there are different requirements for the footwear. Firstly, a walking shoe doesn't have to absorb as much force as a running shoe, and so should have a slightly lower heel. However, it should still have adequate cushioning at the heel strike point. The lower heel, which usually has a slight bevel in the rear, also accommodates the heel strike and forward roll of the foot seen in walking. A higher heel will tend to cause the toe to slap down rapidly, possibly even causing soreness on the shins. The shoe must be flexible in the forefoot. It should also have good toe spring to further aid in the forward roll of the foot from heel to toe. A runner's shoe will only need to allow for probably around 30 degrees of bend, but a walker's shoe really needs to allow around 45 degrees. A stiff heel lends lateral support when the heel first contacts the ground. And we'll choose a slightly firmer yet still comfortable midsole. And this also improves lateral stability and increases the durability of the shoe, since the firmer material is less likely to compress over time. There's no need for the sometimes bulky lateral support structures found in the forefoot of basketball, tennis, aerobics and similar shoes. These only add weight and they're unnecessary in an activity which has little side-to-side movement and is essentially linear, such as walking. Just another tip, wear well-fitting seam-free socks to prevent chafing and to absorb perspiration. They need to fit well, and a cotton-wool mix is usually most comfortable and more absorbent. I'll now take you through walking technique, introducing 3 distinct intensity levels. We'll start at level 1, and this is referred to as health walking. First, focus on your posture by lifting up through the center of your body, trying to maintain a large space between your rib cage and your pelvis. Relax your shoulders down and back and swing your arms in rhythm with your stride. Keep your arms swinging naturally and comfortably. Relax your elbows as you swing your arms in opposition to your legs. The forward swing should never cross the center of the body, and the arms should swing from the shoulder and not from the elbow. The length of each stride should be comfortable, with stride length varying from one individual to another. Stride length is determined by leg length, hamstring tightness, and pelvic rotation. A person with short legs, tight hamstrings, and limited pelvis rotation will therefore have shorter stride length than someone with longer legs, flexible hip joints, and a greater amount of rotation. When you plant your heel, your forefoot and toes are raised towards the shins. This is called dorsiflexion. Then you lower your foot to the ground with control, not slapping or pounding. Finally, your foot rolls from heel to toe. Of course, the faster you bring your rear leg forward, the faster your walking rate. Level 2 is called fitness walking, as although posture remains as in level 1, there are various technique modifications that will enable you to increase the pace now. For fitness walking, bend your elbows so that your arms will swing faster. Swinging the arms faster will cause you to increase your stride frequency. Don't cross the body with the arms. It should be a forward and backward movement coming from the shoulders rather than the elbows. Fix your elbows at about a 90-degree angle. Swing and hold the forearms close to the side. Keep your hands in loose fists in line with your forearms. By the time your foot is planted on the ground, your legs should be almost fully extended. Be careful not to lock your knee, that is to push your legs so straight that it's rigid and can't move back anymore. If you find yourself bobbing or bouncing somewhat as you walk, you may be bending your knee prematurely. Your hips should be rotating slightly as you walk, so one hip will be forward while the other hip is back. Let this hip rotation occur naturally. Don't wiggle your hips to make it happen. If you're walking properly, you'll notice the rotation. As you speed up, you're naturally going to lean more forward. Now make sure this is from the ankles up. Don't bend just from the waist forwards, as this can cause pain and discomfort in your lumbar spine. Level 3 is known as speed walking and is an effort of around 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. So it can't be maintained for long durations, but should be used in short spurts. The technique is as follows. As the arm swings from the shoulder, focus on driving your elbows back and keep them close to the sides of the body. As we said earlier, pumping your arms as fast as you can will naturally increase your stride frequency. Concentrate on increasing stride frequency, not stride length. The hips move or rotate forwards and backwards with a minimum of side-to-side motion. Remember, our aim is to get from A to B in a straight line forwards, so we want our movement to be forwards, not side to side. As the hip of the advancing leg reaches maximum forward rotation, the hip will drop or tilt down slightly, so there's a fair bit of movement going on around the pelvis. Ensure you keep the ball of the rear foot on the ground until the heel of the forward leg has contacted the ground. At the heel plant, the ankle should be dorsiflexed to about 90 degrees, i.e. the toe lift should be more pronounced. The point of contact between the foot and ground moves smoothly from the heel to the ball of the foot in a continuous rolling motion with a strong push off the ball of the foot. At these higher walking speeds, the placement of the foot should form a continuous straight line with the inner edge of one foot landing in front of the inner edge of the other foot, almost like walking on a tightrope rather than walking on tram lines. For most people, the toes are turned outward from the heels approximately 10 degrees, and this angle tends to decrease as you increase your speed. However, this angle of gait varies from one individual to another. Lean forwards from your ankles, as this will give you a feeling of being able to push against the ground harder. It will also help you to avoid overstriding that can slow you down. Leaning too far forward, however, can cause you to land flat-footed or to lift the rear off the ground prematurely. Now that you know the 3 levels of walking, let's talk about structuring your walking workout for maximum benefits. Like any other exercise class, begin with a warm-up, then do the aerobic training section and follow with a cool-down or stretch. As we've discussed previously, the purpose of the warm-up is to prepare your body for exercise by increasing the internal body temperature about 1 or 2 degrees, increasing the blood flow to the muscles and lubricating the joints by pumping synovial fluid into them. Now, level 1 walking is ideal for this purpose. This should be followed by a pulse raiser to bring your heart rate up, increase blood flow to the working muscles, and provide neuromuscular activity that mimics that of the training section of the class. Simply start to increase your walking speed then from level 1 to level 2, concentrating on good posture, relaxed technique with the foot rolling motion. You're aiming to reach an intensity of around 5 to 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. Next is the aerobic section, where the aim is to elevate your heart rate for a specific period of time, leading to calorie burning, improved fitness, reduction in the risk of lifestyle-related diseases. These are all the benefits we're after. This section should form the major part of your walk and should feature alternate bursts of level 3 with level 2 for recovery. You could work for set time periods, perhaps 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or use physical markers. For example, walk level 3 between 2 trees and then level 2 between the next 2 trees, alternating the speed. Your cool-down follows, as this will return your body to its pre-exercise state by reducing the heart rate and breathing rate gradually to more normal levels, followed by stretching the muscles used to maintain or develop flexibility. For a selection of stretches, don't forget to take a look at the stretch workout at the end of this series. So, what are you waiting for? Even if you don't fancy striding out solo, there are plenty of options to help you get started. It's easy enough to locate a mile walking, race walking, American Volksport Association or Nordic Walking Club near to you, so you can have company while you're getting fit. Now, you may have heard the saying that good things come to those who wait, but I hope you'll agree with me now. We've uncovered the so many health and fitness benefits that go with walking that actually good things come to those who walk. And remember, Walking might be cheap, but life is priceless. The main function of muscles is to provide the driving force that brings about movement of the skeleton's complex system of levers. If they can operate through a wide range of motion, then they'll quite obviously be more effective in creating movement of the limbs. And this range of motion is what's known as flexibility. Now, you may remember from our very first lecture that flexibility is considered one of the health-related components of fitness, as a poor score in this area is likely to lead to alignment issues that could increase your risk of postural problems with the potential to negatively affect your quality of life. So, it would be useful to know how to stretch effectively to help you to keep mobile well into your later years. And that's a key part of this presentation, as I intend to equip you with a range of techniques to promote your flexibility and the understanding behind why they work. You'll also learn a few interesting facts about stretching along the way. For instance, does stretching before activity really help to reduce the chance of you injuring yourself? Is it truly the route to reducing feelings of muscle soreness? Can stretching actually make you stronger? You might be quite surprised to learn the answer to these questions. So let's start by defining flexibility in a little more detail. We know flexibility refers to the range of motion around a joint or a group of joints, and it not only varies from person to person, but for each individual, it also differs from joint to joint. It's primarily dependent upon the specific joint structure and is significantly influenced by the connective tissues around each of the joints. Now, as discussed in my lecture on the joints, there are three different types. First are those joints that are fused and exhibit no movement, such as those found in the skull. Secondly, there are joints with limited movement, such as the spine. And then thirdly, there are synovial joints, such as the elbow and the knee, that allow for a higher degree of movement. And clearly, it's in this latter group that our focus is in a stretching program. And these joints rely upon both a capsule that envelops the whole joint and the supporting ligaments to hold the bones together. The capsule can actually be friend or foe, as it fills with synovial fluid to lubricate the joint, and that makes movement easier. But fortunately, it's also tough enough to restrict potential damaging movements. The ligaments are made of fibrous tissue similar to the capsule and serve to attach bone to bone. Importantly, they also give the joint stability by preventing movement that could cause dislocation, for example. Since joint health is related to activity levels, age and gender, then it's no surprise these are key considerations in determining our flexibility. A clear link exists between the amount of exercise taken and mobility of the joints. It's well established, with even just regular walking positively affecting the range of motion in the hips and the lower spine. Now, since tightness in these areas can be a contributory factor in the incidence of falls in the elderly, you begin to appreciate its value in maintaining good quality of life. The American College of Sports Medicine recommends stretching to promote enhanced flexibility as an essential preventive measure. Regular stretching also has been found to significantly reduce low back pain. As we age, there's a gradual slowing of the cell function in muscles, tendons and ligaments, and that leads to a buildup of collagen, the main component of connective tissue, becoming denser and so somewhat resistant to lengthening. As these surround the joint then, reduced mobility is the result, to the extent that some of us lose as much as 50% of our range of movement in some areas. The good news is, however, regular stretching can help to maintain the elasticity of this connective tissue and so reduce the effects of this particular aging process. I asked Dr. Novella if you can recover flexibility even if you've gone years without stretching. Listen to what he had to say.
Other things that can also happen, that commonly happen with age, is a loss of flexibility and balance, but these things are not inevitable. They are not as much of an inevitable consequence of just the aging process as is the issues with muscle and bone physiology. Flexibility can be completely maintained by doing stretching exercises. There are specific diseases that may limit that. For example, arthritis. If you have inflammatory arthritis, you're not going to be able to undo the effects of that with simple stretching. But stretching exercises will deal with the otherwise inevitable loss of flexibility that just happens as a natural consequence of aging.
So unless you have a serious injury, say a stroke or broken limb that requires therapy, it's really a matter of persistent stretching to build up your flexibility. Now, in general, females tend to have better flexibility than males at most joints, and this can be attributed to small differences in the joint structures and the associated connective tissues. The effect of age on flexibility, however, is considerably greater than gender. In addition to the three fundamental determinants of flexibility, age, and sex, there are three other less influential items that are nonetheless worthy of consideration. Body temperature affects range of motion, as it's known to improve along with increasing heat, hence the reason for exercise always beginning with a warm-up period. Contrary to common belief, rather than shortening your muscles and making them stiffer, weight training exercises that work through your full range of motion will improve your flexibility, but more about that later. During pregnancy, the joints and ligaments in the lumbopelvic area, that's your lumbar, stomach, pelvis, hips combined, are relaxed to allow for growth and movement of the fetus, plus to make delivery a little easier. This change is due to the increased levels of the relaxin hormone that drops to normal again after the birth, and so the connective tissues tighten up again. Improving flexibility then requires a stretching program that aims to increase the range of motion and that takes into account the previous factors regarding the joints. Careful consideration should be given to designing a plan to ensure it's safe, appropriate, and effective. If it is, then research shows that regular stretching has been shown to produce the following positive adaptations. Enhanced range of motion, that's a given. Reduced risk of injury and the degree of injury if it occurs. Increased sports performance in terms of endurance and skill. Improved posture, leading to a reduced risk of low back malady. Positive impact on mental health through providing a vehicle for physical relaxation. Now, as we noted in a previous lecture, stretching can be active, brought about by contracting the opposing muscle group to move the limb to a position where the target muscle is lengthened. Or it can be passive, whereby the limb is moved by a partner or yourself or a prop using, say, a towel. However, stretching techniques are divided into three main categories, namely ballistic, static, and PNF. And these are defined as follows. Ballistic stretching involves swinging or bouncing a limb into a position beyond the normal joint range and so lengthening the associated muscles. It's a common technique for elite sports people, especially gymnasts and martial artists, but it's not recommended for the public at large as it's difficult to execute safely. Static stretching, on the other hand, is the most common method of practice, requiring a gentle movement toward the end position that slowly lengthens the muscle, and then we hold at that point. There's a little bit of mild tension for somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds. Let's have a look at that. So let's look at the static stretch in action. So our aim here is to try to lengthen the muscle slowly, and we're going to do this with the hamstring. I'm going to use for the next few examples the hamstring muscle group. So what Cameron's going to do for us is show us this static stretch. So we're going to go with just one leg first of all, because I want you to be aware that you could definitely have difference from one side to the other. This could be due to past injury issues, all sorts of reasons why you might have a difference. So I'd like you to separate, do one leg each side. Now, the other foot, you can have it tucked to the side. You can rest the leg out. You can rest the foot flat and have the knee up. You could go to the hurdle position. It really doesn't matter, whichever position is comfortable for you. More importantly is this front leg. So we're going to sit up nice and tall. We're then going to begin to hinge from the hip rather than round the spine, and we'll start to feel that stretch, that lengthening through the hamstring at the back of the thigh. You're going to find your comfortable position and hold it there. Try to keep the breathing relaxed. Now, this is what will happen. The amazing thing is after around 6 to 8 seconds, somewhere there, you'll start to get something called collagen creep. What will happen there is that the connective tissues will start to align themselves and it'll start to give you a little bit more stretch. So if you take a deep breath, you'll find that in that position you'll be able to go a little bit further. And again, we're going to the point of mild tension. You're trying to get to that point where we feel the stretch. It's not painful, but we can feel that mild tension as the muscle stretches. And a good tip here, if you ease yourself out of that position for me, please. And we'll swap over legs. A good tip here is to use imagery. So try to actually picture the muscle lengthening as you do it. So set yourself up, and remember we've said switching from side to side, try to analyze if there's any difference from one side to the other. That deep breath first, we lower ourselves down to the point of mild tension and hold it there. Now we're looking out for that collagen creep, then taking a deep breath and easing a little further into it, because I know that it will stretch that little bit further when you hold that position. Now, to get our developmental stretches, we're looking really for at least 15 seconds, probably around about 30 seconds is a much better way to do that. So that's how your static stretch works. Let me show you a few other positions you can use this technique in. As you can see, these are fairly easy to execute, and we'll be doing these at the end of each of our workouts later. PNF, or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation stretching techniques, were originally devised as a therapy for patients suffering muscle-related diseases and work by using the body's nervous system to encourage extended lengthening of the muscles. It uses 3 key responses: the myotatic reflex, also known as the stretch reflex, the Golgi tendon organ reflex, and the principle of reciprocal inhibition. So, the myotatic reflex, this is an automatic contraction within the muscle, and it's a response to a changing length being detected by what are known as muscle spindles that lie within the muscle fibers. And this is a self-preserving response to the possibility that the muscle might be stretched too far and could cause tearing of the fibers. This reflex is the reason ballistic stretching carries a little bit of risk. The Golgi tendon organ reflex is the opposite of the above, and that's why it's also sometimes referred to as the inverse stretch reflex. This receptor is located at the point where the muscle joins the tendon, and it detects tension. If it detects very high tension, it interprets this as a possible threat to the muscle, again, potentially causing it to tear. So it forces the muscle to relax, so removing the threat. The third neuromuscular response, reciprocal inhibition, describes the process whereby, because muscles work as cooperating pairs, one muscle has to relax to some degree if the other contracts. So, for example, if I'm using my bicep to lift my arm, my tricep has to relax. Now, these sensory responses are used in combination in a technique called contract, relax, agonist, contract. It's a strange title. Firstly, the target muscle group is stretched slowly in a passive manner. This avoids initiating the myotatic reflex. Then it's held in a position while a voluntary contraction of the muscle is exerted for around 6 seconds without it moving. And this will stimulate the Golgi tendon organ reflex that relaxes the muscle. Now, the opposite muscle group is contracted strongly, and by reciprocal inhibition, the target muscle relaxes even more and so can then be stretched to a much greater degree. And this has been shown to be the best stretching method to improve flexibility. Let's have a look at how it works. Let's now have a look at that proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, PNF, in action. So we're going to work again, as I said earlier, with the hamstring muscle group. And the important thing here is you need to work with your partner. You need to communicate on this one because we've got to very carefully get to that point where we feel the tension, and you've got to know where that is. We don't want to go too far with this. So I'm going to start with Cameron's right leg. So we're going to take the leg up. First thing we're going to do is straighten the leg out, but we're not locking out at the knee, okay? So I'm going to get into a position where I can apply the pressure. What I'm going to do is start to take it forwards. Let's keep the hips down to a point where we feel a mild stretch in the hamstring in the back of the thigh. So let me know when we get to that point. A little nod will do. Fabulous. So we've got to that point now. We're getting that stretch, that mild tension through the back of the thigh. I need to now hold that, listen carefully, hold that position, it can't move. Now what Cameron's going to do is use the hamstring muscle to press against me, so really press hard against me now with that leg. He's trying to force it back, but I'm not letting it move. I've got to work against this. What's happening here is we'll start to stimulate because of that tension and relax. It's only about 6 seconds. The Golgi tendon organ reflex. That'll make the muscle relax. Now, if we use the front of the thigh, we can draw that foot a little further back. Did you see how that's gone a little bit further? And then I can get a hold of it and we can start the whole process again. So you can see how we're increasing the flexibility here. So let's relax. I'll take that stretch until we feel that point where we get that mild tension. Try not to stimulate the myotatic reflex. Brilliant. We're going to hold it, fix it. Same thing again. Let's push back against me. I'm going to hold it. We've got that strong tension through the hamstring muscle. I'm holding on to it. 6 seconds. Then we'll relax it off. Use the front of the thigh to draw the leg closer towards you. And then we'll ease off, and I think you'll have seen there how we managed to increase the flexibility through the legs. So you need to work together on this one, and of course you need to balance, make sure you're working both legs. That's your PNF stretching technique. Let me show you a few other positions in which we can use the same technique. A final technique is called active isolated stretching, suitable for just about anyone, whether elite athletes or couch potatoes. The body positions are comfortable and easily manageable, plus the stretches are gentle and relaxing. Unlike the other techniques we've looked at, this is an active technique you perform with a partner, so it can be a little bit more fun than the others. Now, this technique uses the last of the sensory responses we looked at earlier, regarding the synchronization of paired muscles to allow for coordinated movements. So we begin by contracting the muscles to move through a full range of functional motion. This will result in the opposite muscles switching off and relaxing, allowing a partner to assist the stretch by gently extending the range of motion. Now, this assist should only last for around 2 seconds, and each stretch should only be performed 10 times. Let's have a look at this one in action. So our final stretching technique is the active isolated stretch. And remember, this works on the principle of reciprocal innervation. So by using one muscle group, the other muscle group relaxes. So the way we're going to work this is, again, we'll look at it, how it applies to our hamstring muscle group at the back of the thigh. So we're lying down, comfortable position. Again, be aware of your neutral spine. What's going to happen here is Cameron's going to swing that right leg for me, please. It's under control. Now, it is a slightly ballistic movement, but it's controlled. Now, what's happening here is we're really switching on the front of the thigh, the hip flexors, to pull this leg up. While that's happening, then the hamstring muscle is having to relax and stretch. That's our reciprocal innervation. Now, what happens is, if we get too far and it gets to a point where, hang on a minute, this is going to be too much of a stretch, the hamstring muscle group will kick in and try and put a brake on the movement, yeah? But what I'm going to do is just before it gets to the end of the movement, before the hamstrings have decided to put a brake on, I'm going to add just a little bit of a push. And it'll allow us to go, as I think you'll see, just a few degrees further. So we're increasing that dynamic flexibility, increasing that range of motion by using this principle of reciprocal innervation. The strength on the front, before the hamstring at the back has time to switch off, I'm going to add just that little extra push. Now, the important thing is it doesn't stop. It's a continuation of the movement. So you need to watch it a couple of times first, be aware of how it works, and then just add that little extra push at the end. Now, we're looking for 10 repetitions of that exercise. That's the target figure. It's a key figure. 10 repetitions of each exercise. Now, here's a few other ways you can use that technique. As with any form of exercise, you should follow a plan. But this is where flexibility becomes the black sheep of the exercise physiology community, as unlike cardio, fitness, strength, etc., there are no universally agreed upon programs. Rest assured, however, applying a smidgen of common sense and committing yourself to regular stretching will bear fruit in the shape of increased range of motion. As a guideline then, I'll offer you the following advice. Try to stretch regularly, daily if possible. We hold those static stretches at the point of mild tension for 15 seconds to maintain flexibility, but nearer to 30 seconds to improve it. Ensure you're warm before stretching, either after some cardio exercise or a good time is when you're fresh out of a warm bath. Be aware of your posture. Ensure you're in a comfortable position to stretch that allows you to focus on the target muscle. Perform stretches that target the joints in which you feel particularly stiff or that replicate movements you need for your chosen sport. It's a good idea to use deep breathing, gentle music, and sometimes a little visualization to help your efforts by helping the muscles to relax. But if at any time you feel a sharp or stabbing pain, release the stretch immediately. Now, I'd like to go off at a slight tangent here and tackle a few myths and misconceptions related to stretching that unfortunately are not just held by members of the public, but some lesser qualified fitness professionals unfortunately harbour a few of these uncertainties. So be warned, some of these may come as a slight shock and could be almost contrary to what you may have previously heard or read. Firstly, to answer the most basic question I'm often asked on this subject, flexibility is not related to your shape, as height, weight, arm span and leg length do not significantly affect range of motion. Resistance or weight training, a topic we looked at earlier when we discussed flexibility, often causes confusion. It's easy to assume that weight training leads to the stiffness we've seen in huge bodybuilders who can only seem to scratch their backs by adopting the technique made famous by Baloo the bear in Jungle Book, if you remember him leaning against a rock. However, there's absolutely no link between muscle size and immobility. In fact, because resistance training results in improvements in the elasticity of the muscles and the tensile strength in the tendons and ligaments, it can increase your range of motion over time, even without doing stretching. Having said that, resistance training can improve flexibility. You might not be totally surprised to learn that this is a reciprocal relationship. So yes, believe it or not, flexibility training can actually improve your strength. By increasing your flexibility, the muscles are able to operate over a greater range of motion. So we recruit more muscle fibers and so we generate more force. Now, another item that causes much misunderstanding is the place of stretching in warm-up, preparing for exercise and sporting pursuits. Should we stretch beforehand or not? Now, the clue here to the purpose of a warm-up is in the title, as increased body temperature through movement will stimulate the flow of synovial fluid into the joints that lubricates them. Respiratory speed will increase to introduce more oxygen to generate fuel, and the heart rate will increase to transport nutrients to the working muscles. Most importantly, however, as temperature increases, so does the speed of nerve impulses, and it is this that is the key to reducing the risk of injury. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're walking down a road. It's an uneven surface. You may have experienced this where you get a little twist of the ankle on something uneven, and automatically, without you thinking, it corrects itself. Yeah? Now, what's actually happened there is as we've begun to roll over here, those Golgi tendon organs have detected, hang on a minute, there's a lot of tension going on here. There's a message that gets sent on what's called a neural arc that comes up here, through to the spinal cord, comes back down, and this message goes, hang on a minute, I'm going too far here. There's going to be some injury unless something happens. The message that comes back down is, we need to contract this muscle quickly and get ourselves back in that position before something goes wrong. So, this is what happens. And all of that happens in that split second without us having to consciously correct ourselves. Now, the beauty of this is, the faster that message transfers, then the less risk there is of injury, yeah? Now, the beauty of the nerve fibers is they're encased in something called the myelin sheath. The myelin sheath is purely there, it serves one purpose, to insulate the nerve fibers to keep them warm, because guess what? The warmer you are, the faster those messages will transfer. So clearly then, in order to reduce this risk of injury, I need those muscle messages to transfer really, really quickly. Yeah? So the key to reducing the risk of injury has nothing at all to do with whether I've spent time, and I've never yet seen anybody do this before they exercise, stretching what's called the peroneal muscle on the outside of the ankle and lower leg. You wouldn't do it. So warm-up is absolutely vital. Stretching, I'm afraid, won't make any difference in that example. And there are actually now a number of studies that confirm that not only does pre-exercise stretching not reduce the risk of injury, there's even a school of thought suggesting that it increases the risk of injury by rendering the joints less stable. So the warm-up then should focus on mobility and increasing temperature. Stretching to develop flexibility is best left until the end of the session when you're warm. Our final controversy concerns the much heralded value of stretching in preventing muscle soreness experienced the day following exercise. You may well have heard the advice, oh, you must stretch after your workout or you'll feel stiff tomorrow. Well, muscle soreness is actually the sum of several factors, including microtrauma to the muscle fibers. Basically, it's inflammation within the cells and irritation of the nerve endings due to the additional enzyme activity. Now, since stretching cannot possibly impact upon these processes that lead to that, then it can't affect muscle soreness. So if you exercise it intensely today, you've got to expect muscle soreness tomorrow and then embrace it, because it's a sign that you've worked hard enough to set in motion the adaptive responses that will lead to positive change. Please note, however, a cool down will help to remove waste products, the lactic acid we talked about in our energy systems lecture, and in turn reduce the inflammation to some degree. It also, of course, helps for your heart rate and respiration to slow down gradually instead of abruptly. Remember, we talked about this as well. So your workout should finish with a cool down, and stretching can be part of that cool down. But it's not the fact that you're stretching that makes the difference, just the fact that you're doing something active to gradually bring you back to homeostasis rather than stopping dead in your tracks. So now you know that flexibility is a key player in maintaining a good quality of life into your later years. And you're armed with an array of stretching techniques you can employ to not just retain, but actually improve your mobility. When it comes to flexibility, you can do it alone or with a friend. You can do it indoors or out. You can do it in the morning or at night. You can do it every day or just every other day. But the important thing is, to borrow a well-known phrase from one of the sportswear giants, just do it. According to the US Census Bureau, during the 20th century, the population under 65 tripled, whilst at the same time their relatives over 65 increased by a factor of 11. As a proportion, shifting the ratio of 1 in 25 to a considerable 1 in 8. Now, projections suggest this will be around 1 in 5 by halfway through this century. So clearly then, it's important for the population to develop and maintain good health moving into later years in order to reduce the risk of illness, injury and disease that will predicate loss of independence and significantly increase healthcare costs. More importantly, however, is the concept of maintaining a good quality of life. And the good news is that to a great degree, this lies in our own hands, with exercise being a key factor as supported by the National Institute on Aging, making it a platform for its Go for Life campaign. There's now an abundance of research to confirm that fitness levels achieved in our younger years can impact upon not just the physical but also our psychological health in later life. In addition, all the signs point to the fact that if we continue to be active, then we can expect to retain a desirable quality of life well into our advanced years. So in this lecture, we'll take a journey through the aging body and investigate just how it changes as the years go by. We'll also look at what value exercise has in helping us to resist the aging process and draw up a plan of just what form that should take. Whilst I don't deny we all have a biological clock, if you stay with me for the next 30 minutes, I'll equip you with the tools to seriously slow it down. Be warned though, I'm about to challenge some of your firmly held beliefs about growing old. The aging process is influenced by a number of factors, but primarily genetics, disease, and lifestyle. It's this later variable in particular that has been shown to be susceptible to manipulation and capable of impacting lifespan. Not only is an active lifestyle recommended for good health, whatever your age, there's a school of thought that now suggests the older you are, the more important it is. But what about that old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Is that really true? Let's go to Professor Sapolsky for just a minute and find out what happens in the brain when you pick up something like exercise as an adult.
Amazing finding. One of the biggest revolutions in neurobiology in the last 20 years is the fact that the brain, the adult brain, makes new neurons. New neurons in a part of the brain having to do with memory. You took an introductory neurobiology class anytime since the pharaohs, and the first thing they teach you is your brain doesn't make new neurons by the time you're 3 years old. Massive revolution that there is actually, jargon, adult neurogenesis. So what triggers this, what stimulates this? It's environmental stimulation, it's learning new things, it's exercise as well. And what is one of the coolest things about it is making new neurons in response to stimulation, enrichment, exercise, all of that. That is not just the purview of 20-year-old jocks. What the studies already show is get a 90-year-old more stimulated through any of those routes, and afterward, when you examine the brain, there are new perky adolescent neurons there going about their rejuvenating business. Aging is no more a time of life where stress is an inevitability than at any earlier stage.
Now that's encouraging, isn't it? So you don't have an excuse if you've never been active up until now. Of relevant note is that whilst exercise is of benefit at any age, it's been proposed that age 50 years is a critical point at which taking regular exercise can protect against the physical and psychological deteriorations associated with getting old. In other words, frailty and even disability. When we consider the benefits of regular exercise, it's important to stress that these apply at any age, so it's never too late to embark upon a new exercise regime and enjoy the lower risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, falls, stress, and even depression. Now add to that improved strength, flexibility, balance, self-esteem, better sleep, and social contact, and you start to wonder why anyone would not voluntarily partake. It's true to say that exercise can not only add years to your life, but will certainly put life in your years, even if you're currently not active. Before we can prescribe appropriate exercise advice, we need to understand the changes that occur in the body as we age. So let's begin with the bones. We know from our earlier lecture on this topic that a drop in calcium levels is the most noticeable result of aging, more so in women than men, due to the issue of reduced estrogen levels post-menopause. Now, this manifests itself in bones becoming brittle and more likely to fracture as we age. It also introduces the risk of changes in the spine, notably exacerbated curvature, leading to poor posture, also increased risk of falls and extra pressure on key joints. Fortunately, though, there's a wealth of evidence to show that inactivity is the major contributor to osteoporosis and that weight-bearing exercise can retain bone mineral density. This is why there's so much emphasis on encouraging regular exercise from an early age as a preventive measure. However, older adults who commit to 1 hour each day could reduce risk of hip fracture by as much as 50%, although the type of activity is important. Tennis and jogging, for example, are favoured in comparison to walking and gardening, which have showed no effect on the rate of fracture incidence. This is the first point at which we notice the idea that exercise can actually slow the aging process, although listen carefully as this will become a recurring theme. Since osteoporosis sufferers may already exhibit reduced mobility, clearly exercise will need to begin gently, with aqua exercise, for example, being a recommended option to help improve movement. Although the buoyancy of the water reduces the weight bearing which is needed, so switching to dry land will be necessary as soon as possible. A combination of cardio and strength training is the ideal recipe to begin with, and these exercises should focus on improving the ability to perform daily activities. It's also important to remember from our lecture on bones that adaptations to exercise are site-specific, so a program must incorporate a total body approach. Now, a common feature in older adults is a slight forward bend at the hip and in the lumbar spine, this sort of position like so. So it's recommended to stretch the muscles at the front of the body, particularly if we take the hip flexors. So I'd take a stretch where I'd take 1 foot behind and then a little tilt of the pelvis forwards will start to stretch through here. But also to strengthen the posterior chain of muscles. So exercises that will work through the muscles that protect the lower back. And if you look at our lecture on the spine, you'll find several examples there of how we can do that. Let's move on to the joints. The most obvious consideration in the joints is the decreased range of motion caused by stiffening of the connective tissue around them, in combination also with the muscles losing their elasticity. Also, the production of synovial fluid, that's the fluid that lubricates the joints, this decreases and actually becomes more viscous. The cartilage that covers the ends of the bones can actually tear and lose fluid, so reducing the cushioning effect when the joints move. These changes not only restrict movement, but can actually cause pain, although previous injury is one of the causes for these changes, but also a sedentary lifestyle can be a significant cause. In the spine, the discs between the vertebrae that are also made of cartilage begin to lose their fluid and increased calcium deposits are noted, so their ability to soften movement in these vital joints is somewhat impaired. As mentioned then, these combined changes lead to reduced movement, most noticeably in the ankles, in the knees, in the hips, but this can be overcome through regular activity. Arthritis is the most common ailment associated with old age and actually includes a large number of different conditions that lead to degeneration and inflammation of the joints. Examples being osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis and gout. When considering exercise as an intervention, the first thing to appreciate is that it will not make the condition worse, which can be a common misconception. Not only will it help to improve cardiovascular profile, increase muscular strength, and improve your flexibility, it can also have a positive impact on mental health through additional social contact, as we mentioned earlier, enhanced self-esteem, and reduced feelings of depression. But even better than this, some studies have shown that exercise can help to relieve pain symptoms in nearly half of arthritis sufferers. So here are some guidelines for this population. Firstly, we need to consider low-impact activities and try to avoid prolonged one-leg work. We need some balance work, but make sure we're switching side to side. Focus on strength and flexibility at first, and avoid positions that involve you kneeling for prolonged periods. Repeated short bouts are a better option than a long workout. Let's have a look now at muscles. If we now look at muscles, the changes are similar to bone in that there's a progressive loss of tissue with advancing years. But again, the general decline we see is more often associated with inactivity rather than age. Older persons who remain active display better strength and ability to perform their daily tasks than sedentary counterparts. Research suggests that as we age, there will be a decline in type 2 muscle fibers, known as the fast twitch variety, due to the speed of their contraction. So as a result of this, our power will reduce. And so it's fair to assume sprinting speeds, for example, will decrease with age. Potential maximum tension, however, is unaffected, as the motor unit, which is the nerve and the muscle combination, will still perform as designed. So any decrease in strength is due to other influences. This is why some bodybuilders have been able to compete well into their later years. Reductions in the number of blood vessels, enzyme concentration, and the ability to store energy in the muscle cells, and all these factors, will contribute to a decline in muscular endurance. Exercise prescription, then, is clearly going to incorporate strength training, as gains can be made at any age. The beauty of strength and endurance training is that the benefits will not solely be restricted to the physical, as the associated increases in the ability to perform everyday tasks and the reduced risk of falls promote a psychological boost also. In support of the argument that exercise can bring positive changes at any age, a 2007 study showed that after 26 weeks of progressive resistance training, a group of elderly persons with an average age of 68 years were found to improve their relative strength from 59% lower to only 38% lower than the control group with an average age of 24 years. You could even argue that in this case, exercise doesn't just slow the aging process, it actually reverses it. Let's move on to the cardiovascular system. And we find that age-related changes here are less pronounced than in the bones and the muscles, as we've just discussed. The heart retains the capability to supply blood to the body and allowing it to perform everyday tasks. So again, the theory here is that most of the changes we see are due to inactivity rather than age. There'll undoubtedly be a decrease in the heart muscle performance, the efficiency of the blood vessels to transport the oxygen, and the ability of the skeletal muscle to use it. But fortunately, these drawbacks can be significantly mitigated by regular exercise, which can lead to increases in stroke volume, which is the total amount of blood pumped with each beat, the total blood volume, and high-density lipoproteins, or the good cholesterol. So adherence to a suitable exercise program, then, can afford a high protection against cardiovascular disease, the sort of things we associate with aging, for example, hypertension and diabetes. Next, let's consider breathing and how aging affects the mechanics of respiration. Although our breathing apparatus is fully grown by our mid-20s, the efficiency of gaseous exchange continues to improve into early 40s. And you'll recall that the gaseous exchange is simply the process of carbon dioxide and oxygen circulating between the blood and the lungs. Now, this is why endurance athletes, such as marathon runners, will reach their peak a little later than athletes in other disciplines. Ingeniously, The respiratory system is designed with extra capacity so that when a decline begins from age 40 onwards, it isn't noticed in the course of carrying out common daily activities. Changes are more likely to restrict the ability to accommodate strenuous exercise. So let's consider some of these physiological changes. Firstly, the lung volume will decrease as the lung tissues and the chest wall lose elasticity. There'll be a reduction in the number of cilia, the tiny hairs that remove particles from the airways, and that can increase the risk of infection. Collagen builds up around the alveoli, those little air bubbles, leading to a reduced surface area and so diminishing the exchange of gases, leading to a little less oxygen being available. Calcification affects the trachea and the rib cartilages, leading to a stiffness that reduces the ability to expand and take in more air. Now, these factors combine to initiate a gradual increase in the rate of breathing that tends to be shallow chest breathing. This doesn't preclude exercise, but leads to the suggestion that deep breathing should be consciously encouraged, and alternating intervals of higher and lower intensity will be preferable. Positive adaptations have been noted in asthmatics who engage in regular exercise, although in this case, recommendations are to begin gently and gradually increase to a medium intensity. A training program should also include exercise to encourage good posture, especially in the thoracic region, as this will clearly impact upon breathing mechanics. Finally, on our tour of how aging affects the body and its functions, we'll consider the nervous system. Now here, evidence shows that coordination declines with age. But interestingly, research has shown that active older people have faster reactions than inactive younger people. Again, suggesting that a sedentary lifestyle is the key factor rather than the passing sands of time. In our look at the brain, we established that neurons do decline naturally, but physical challenges such as learning new motor skills can lead to development of an unlimited number of neural pathways. A notable point here is that if a muscle is not regularly used, the motor units that control it can shrink and the neuron becomes less efficient, so proving that inactivity accelerates the aging process. In addition, due to the cardiovascular changes that take place that we discussed earlier, blood supply to the brain may decline, restricting the oxygen provided, and without this fuel, brain processes can be prolonged, which is what causes loss of coordination and an increased risk of balance issues, with, of course, the potential for falls. Diminished neural activity can also lead to a slowed reaction to requirements for redistributing blood supply that results in blood pooling, the term given to blood remaining in the extremities, which can cause dizziness. This can manifest itself in a drop of blood pressure if standing up quickly from a sitting or lying position, something that's known as postural hypertension. So, as you'll be aware already, aging is linked to degeneration in both sight and hearing ability. The lens loses elasticity, and so making it harder to focus, in addition to which the iris muscles weaken, and so the amount of light entering the retina is reduced, and hence the problems. The light-adapted eye of a 20-year-old receives 6 times more light than that of an 80-year-old. In dark-adapted conditions, the 20-year-old eye receives about 16 times more light. In comparison to younger people, it is as though older persons were wearing medium-density sunglasses in bright light and extremely dark glasses in dim light. With hearing, it's mainly the ability to detect higher pitch tones that becomes difficult, although other sounds can be a problem if there's a high level of background noise. Whilst many elderly persons are unwilling to accept the reduction in these senses, it clearly happens, and it's a contributory factor in balance issues, especially when combined with the slower speed of information transfer from the skin, vibratory sensors, and the muscle and joint receptors. You may remember we talked about the muscle spindles and the Golgi tendon organs in our stretching lecture. As we've already discovered in previous sections, regular exercise can bring about improvements in the cardiovascular system. Also, breathing function, muscle performance, and all of these will enhance the efforts of the central nervous system. Now, thus far, we've only really scratched on the surface in the domain of exercise prescription, so let's dig a little deeper. A critical phenomenon to take on board at this stage is an appreciation of diversity amongst the older population. So to support this, bear in mind the oldest person to complete a marathon was, get ready for this, 98 years old. Yet a UK study revealed that over a third of people over 50 who have no restrictive medical conditions just simply don't exercise regularly. In the US, national data shows that only 31% of those aged 65 to 74 participate in 20 minutes of moderate physical activity on 3 or more days of the week. Only 16% report 30 minutes of moderate activity 5 or more times a week. And the figures decline even more for the truly vigorous physical activity that can really help to maintain your cardiovascular health. So when we try to define the concept of aging, it's clear it has relative, social, functional, and chronological dimensions. The gym is the home of an incredibly wide variety of exercise and program variations, but a proportion of these are purely for aesthetic gains. For the older exerciser, however, the desired goals are more likely to be the ability to carry the groceries, being able to stand up from a chair without emitting a groan that I notice I've started to do, and having the energy to take the family dog for a walk in the park. This is what the physiologists refer to as functional fitness. It's totally relevant to your day-to-day living, and it's the difference between independence and potentially becoming a burden on those close to you. So your quality of life, both today and tomorrow, is at stake here. So this then provides the framework for us to build an exercise regime. In order to develop or retain a desirable degree of functional fitness, the following components are the targets for improvement. Firstly, cardiovascular fitness, on muscular strength and endurance, flexibility, balance, and motor skills. So let's look at these in order, look at them in a little bit more detail. Cardiovascular training will induce improvements in your maximal oxygen uptake, leading to an enhanced ability to walk, cycle, or swim without discomfort, in addition to giving a general feeling of having a good energy level. Cardiac output, lowering heart rate, and also reducing hypertension are key bonuses. The blood supply and enzyme concentration, leading to better muscular endurance, will increase. And so we've got, various improvements here, but the requirements to bring these about are that we need to aim for something every day if possible, even if you have to build up to this. Try to avoid high intensity exercise. We're looking at medium intensity, around 5 to 7 out of 10 on an intensity level, depending on your current fitness level. 30 minutes is the target, but remember, benefits can be accrued in a piecemeal fashion. So 2 lots of 15 minutes or 3 bouts of 10 minutes will produce the same gains. So suddenly it doesn't seem so onerous. I'm sure you can manage 10 minutes. The exercise mode should incorporate movements of large muscle groups. So walking, cycling, swimming are the favored options. If we move now to training for muscular strength and endurance, these are the kind of things that we can expect. We can expect increased strength and so the ability to lift and carry things at home. We can look forward to better endurance, enabling us to walk up and down the stairs much more easily. Increased lean muscle tissue, helping to boost metabolism and so control body composition is a welcome change. And of course, enhanced bone density, decreasing the risk of fractures. So how do we bring about these improvements in muscular strength and endurance? This is how we do it. Firstly, we need to include exercise for all the major muscle groups, and that's in common with our cardiovascular training. 3 times per week, ideally with a day's rest in between to allow the muscles to rest. Overload is the key. So workouts must lead to muscular fatigue. So you may need to build up to this at first. Again, expect to take around 30 minutes, performing maybe 2 to 3 sets of an exercise, and we're looking for 10 to 12 repetitions of each exercise. For those who are comfortable, gym workouts are an option, but beginners may prefer the comfort of home workouts using just your body weight as a resistance. And we've got a specific workout for you later in the series to do just that. Let's have a look at flexibility training. And this can bring several positive benefits, such as increased range of movement, making it easier to perform our daily tasks, lengthening the key postural muscles, leading to better static and dynamic posture, plus improved balance. Less stiffness, less pain on moving. Wouldn't that be welcome? So, let's look at the guidelines for flexibility training. How do we get these improvements? Begin with just 2 stretching sessions each week and build up to 5. Remember to always warm up first with at least 5 minutes of gentle cardio type activity. Mix dynamic stretching techniques, but not bouncing, with static stretches that are held at the end point of mild tension for 15 to 30 seconds. Again, have a look at our flexibility lecture for some tips there. Try to include stretches for the whole body, targeting problems that may exist, for example, stiffness due to old sports injuries, or maybe rounded shoulders and short hamstrings due to years of working in a seated position. Remember, when doing your stretching exercises, try to keep your breathing relaxed. Next on our shopping list is balance. As we have seen, balance is a composite of several functions working in harmony and will be directly affected by the previous fitness components: muscular strength, flexibility, especially in the lower limbs. Now, balance, as we've already established, can be static or dynamic, and it's governed by 3 senses. There's the visual, the vestibular, where sensors in the inner ear detect the position of the head, and then somatosensory, which includes touch. So how do we train to improve balance? Firstly, adopting wide, narrow and single leg stances for basic exercises such as a bicep curl or squats will help to develop static balance. Use movements in all directions to promote gains in dynamic balance. So try not to always be working forwards, backwards and side to side. Let's move at diagonals as well. Include exercises that employ functional training equipment, the core board, the wobble board, the TRX, the straps that you can hang from the ceiling, and things like FlexiBar or Body Blade, the things that we have to shake and use the vibrational energy. Finally, let's have a look at motor skills that will unfortunately deteriorate, but can fortunately benefit automatically from the previously mentioned balance exercises. However, including the following also will lead to even further gains in coordination. Playing catch with a knobbly ball, an uneven ball, or a partner to give an element of surprise will develop quick reactions. Performing your exercises at different speeds. Simple things like walking your usual route to the shop but in a different direction, learning a new swimming stroke. All of these things will help. Whilst much of this presentation is focused on the multifarious benefits of exercise for the elderly, we've also established that regular exercise throughout our lives will build a degree of protection against many conditions and make a big difference to quality of life in later years. So let's try and put together a blueprint then to help you to adapt your exercise regime to the challenges of aging, ensuring you derive the maximum benefit. Let's break it down by decade. We'll start in your 20s. At this point, bone density is increasing, so it's vital to exercise appropriately in order to lay down as much bone tissue as possible before the decline begins. Cardio activity should be weight-bearing, therefore, so opt for high-impact aerobics and aim for 2 weight training sessions per week. If the free weights area of the gym is not your cup of tea, try a group exercise class, maybe something like body pump group resistance. Your target working heart rate is at its maximum now, so your cardio sessions should be intense. You should be pushing yourself, maybe up to 90% of your recommended range, which you calculate by subtracting your age from 220. You're also at your most flexible around now, but don't let this lead you into a false sense of security. This will decline as you age, so don't skip your stretching, particularly after your workout. Allow at least 10 minutes and aim to lengthen the muscles in the whole body. It's a great time to start including yoga or Tai Chi in your workouts, for example. Moving on to your 30s, this is when the first signs of aging process will really begin to manifest, with loss of muscle tissue most noticeable in the back of the upper arms, sometimes unsympathetically labeled as bingo wings. Unfortunately, losing lean body tissue also leads to a slowing of your metabolic rate, so this is when the pounds might begin to pile on. Increase weight training to 3 times per week now. Target your problem zones, the triceps, the abdominals, the buttocks, as this could be the decade of childbearing. So this could be an issue. Busy mums, be aware that you need those cardio workouts. But we've said that 3 times 10 minutes is just as effective in terms of calorie burning as a 30-minute bout. Bone density here is at its peak. So choose weight-bearing exercises such as jogging. The metabolic rate begins to slow in your 40s, together with changes in hormone levels. So you may notice the storage of extra pounds. In addition, your target heart rate declines. So it's important to lower the intensity, but therefore increase the duration of your cardio workouts if you want to burn fat. Start to think now about protecting your joints from wear and tear by opting for low-impact exercise. So switch jogging for power walking, high-impact aerobics for spinning, indoor cycling. Weight training should remain a staple of your exercise diet, not only to counter the inevitable muscle loss we've already spoken about, but also to give the requisite strength to tackle your daily tasks such as carrying the shopping to the car, digging the garden, whatever. Moving on to your 50s, it's vital here to maintain activity levels as the risk of heart disease increases and bone density decreases due to the lowering of the estrogen levels post-menopause. Circuit training here is ideal. It'll combine cardio and strength work, so it ticks both the boxes for us. The best option here is the PHA format. We spoke about that in a different lecture, alternating upper and lower body exercises at each station, as this will give a greater calorie burn. Now, this is the time when stiffness is noticeable, particularly in the lower spine, so flexibility work is seriously recommended. Consider yoga and core conditioning exercises to improve posture and to protect your back. The good news is that after 60, it's actually better to be slightly overweight. Caution the word slightly there. And this is because the risk of osteoporosis and fractures is actually higher if you're too thin. Now, don't let this deter you from the prescription to maintain cardio exercise to burn calories. Think about activities here that are easier on the joints, as the thinning cartilage and the stiffening of the tendons and ligaments can leave them a little more susceptible to injury. So this is where aqua workouts are perfect, since they allow for the muscles to work against the water resistance for toning benefits, but the buoyancy supports the joints. Walking should be your prime cardio option here, whether in the form of a country hike, early morning mile walking before the shops open, whatever it is, a stride session on the treadmill, or just a weight loss power walk. If you carry some weight while you walk, you'll also help to maintain your body density, so a couple of little dumbbells in the hands perhaps. Whilst not an obvious choice for most pensioners, gym sessions are also vital, particularly if practicing functional strength work on the cable machines to mimic everyday movements. So doing chopping type movements will mimic the idea of picking things up and putting them on a shelf. I remember a few years ago, one of the leading sportswear brands gave birth to the slogan, "Fitness is a race with no finish line." And I certainly hope I've now convinced you of that. The quality of your life in later years is only loosely linked to your actual age. Rather, the most important factor is your activity level. Although often muttered as an off-the-cuff phrase, the concept of use it or lose it carries much greater meaning than it first appears to. If, like many of us in this day and age, you're looking for the secret of eternal youth, I think that in exercise, you may just have found it. this series, we've looked at the body's amazing structure and the incredible processes that take place within it. In all cases, discovering that regular exercise can bring positive changes, leading to improvements in health status. We've seen there's evidence to suggest that we can reduce our risk of suffering from heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and certain cancers, and also control weight management simply by committing to being active. The flip side of this coin, however, is that a sedentary lifestyle can have a quite significant negative impact on one's health, with recent research stacking up to highlight just how dangerous inactivity can be to our future well-being. If you take into account that due to the technological age in which we now live, most of us will be sedentary for around 70% of the day, be that driving the kids to school, working at a computer, eating at the dinner table, or simply flaking out on the couch in front of the television, we should perhaps all take a moment to consider whether we spend too much time on our backsides and if there's a possibility that we're at risk of succumbing to sitting disease. Now, don't be fooled. This term isn't simply marketing speak. Consider the following statistics. According to the American Institute for Cancer Research, around 100,000 new cases of breast and colon cancer each year are linked to sedentary lifestyles. A study at the University of South Carolina showed that people who were inactive for more than 23 hours per week had a 64% greater risk of death from heart disease when compared to a control group who were sedentary for less than 11 hours per week. It's estimated that up to 100,000 people die each year from blood clots, and sitting in one position for too long is the key factor. We've known the dangers of sitting for a long time now. These were discovered back in the late 50s, when we realised that men who were employed in manual labour roles were less likely to suffer coronary artery disease than those whose jobs were not physically active. This was supported by the relatively large Canadian fitness survey in 2009, published in the Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise, that looked at more than 7,000 men and nearly 10,000 women over a considerable 12-year period. The study participants ranged in age from 18 to 90 years, so it was an unusually broad study. The research concluded that there's a significant link between time spent seated and mortality. More importantly, the study revealed that being active doesn't balance out the negative effects of being seated too much of the time. So, even if you achieve the recommended minimum target of 30 minutes, 5 times per week, spending too many of your waking hours parked on your backside is not good for you. This doesn't negate the fact, of course, that you still need to be active, but you do need to break up bouts of sitting. At this point, you may be wondering, just how does sitting down have such a bad effect on health? Well, let's take a look at the physiological implications of being sedentary. A 2008 study published in Current Cardiovascular Risk Reports showed that if we don't stand, electrical activity within the muscles effectively ceases, leading to a drop of up to 90% in the levels of lipoprotein lipase, which is an enzyme that draws fat out of the bloodstream for use as fuel, as it clearly won't be required. This then leads to a higher concentration of blood fats that are known to increase the risk of cardiovascular malaise. In addition, sitting appears to lead to around a 20% reduction in high-density lipoprotein, known as the good cholesterol, for its positive effect on the circulatory system, so, again, increasing the risk of suffering from cardiovascular disease. Unsurprisingly, sitting probably only requires contractions of the small muscles in the hands and forearms. I'm thinking of a computer here, or a phone handset, or maybe even a television remote control. And these will use up little amounts of energy when compared to the big muscles in the legs, in the buttocks, in the lower back. As a result, your metabolism plummets, so calories are not being consumed but absorbed, a fact that will more than likely manifest itself in the waist area. The story gets worse. As remaining sedentary for more than 24 hours, for example, when on bed rest due to a serious debilitating injury or illness, impairs the ability of our insulin to uptake glucose. Now this, in turn, raises the risk of diabetes, as found in a study at the Pennington Biomedical Research Centre. It's also worth noting blood circulation is, to a certain degree, dependent upon movement. Yes, the heart's a pump. It's key in getting the oxygen-rich blood around to all the extremities within the body. But venous return is assisted by the squeezing effect of the muscles on the veins when they contract. So, when the legs are not moving, the leg muscles are not contracting, and the risk of blood pooling in the lower limbs is increased, potentially leading to a number of health-related issues, such as deep vein thrombosis, which is a clot in the leg or groin, and feeling lightheaded when standing. Of more concern, however, is the impact on the lymphatic system, as it's solely reliant upon the massage effect of the muscles due to movement. What this tells us then is that sitting, like any more accepted illnesses, has an associated pathology. And this is the reason why, even if you hit the gym straight after work, an 8-hour day spent sat at your desk is going to take its toll in time. Unfortunately, whether you're carrying a little excess baggage and totally out of shape, or even a finely honed Olympic athlete, too much sitting can be deleterious to your health. Dr. Tony Yancey, co-director of the Kaiser Permanente Center for Health Equity at the University of California, Los Angeles, has conducted considerable research into this topic and sums up the situation excellently in the following quote: "We just aren't really structured to be sitting for such long periods of time. And when we do that, our body just kind of goes into shutdown. There's a fountain of youth. It's probably physical activity. So the problem isn't whether it's a good idea. The problem is how to get people to do more of it." This really should come as no surprise, for in this course we've learned that the human body adapts specifically to the demands that are placed upon it. For example, in our look at the skeleton, we discovered that loading the bones through resistance training stimulates growth at a cellular level, and so bone density increases, leading to a reduction in the risk of osteoporosis. So it follows then the converse will also be true. Thus, sitting is in effect training your body to do nothing and leads to physiological adaptations that reduce your functionality. Since the hazards of too much sitting can affect us even when we're active, what we need is a blueprint to reduce sedentary behaviour. Obviously, this involves taking stock of our daily routine and attempting to find opportunities to reduce the time spent seated, particularly long, uninterrupted bouts. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean heading for the gym and a full hour-long workout, but engaging in what's referred to as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT for short. This label was originated by Dr. James Levine of the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, who in 2005 published results of his detailed analysis of metabolism. Dr. Levine was trying to uncover why it is that two people can eat an identical diet, but one might gain weight while the other doesn't. He tracked not only food consumption, but also activity, and I mean every activity. He used motion tracking underwear to detect even the smallest movements, enabling him to notice that those people who don't gain weight move more. Amazingly, those who didn't put on weight during the study were also the same people who, without even thinking about it, felt an urge to be active, to take the stairs, for instance, rather than the elevator. He found that the weight gainers sat for 2 hours longer each day, on average, than those who didn't put on pounds. The great news is, in the NEAT world, little things add up to big changes. Unfortunately, we can't just all give up our jobs and then take up a physical vocation, so what's required is some creative thinking to introduce more movement to your daily routine and so reduce the amount of time you spend sitting. As an example, did you know there already exists a first grade classroom with no chairs, where children are encouraged to crawl and climb whilst performing basic literacy and numeracy drills? In addition, treadmill desks are not the stuff of science fiction movies, but can actually be found in some more health-conscious offices. Since sitting disease affects us at the desk at work, in front of the television or computer at home, on flights and behind the wheel of our cars, here's a four-pronged defence strategy that can serve as a critical dose of preventive medicine. Firstly, at work, where likelihood of being stationed at a desk is the issue. Take your breaks by walking to the water fountain. As well as the exercise you're getting, H2O has got known benefits to health also. When you need to powder your nose, walk to the furthest away toilet in the building. Stand whenever you're taking a phone call. Earn your coffee break by walking up and down the stairs a few times immediately beforehand. Can you schedule 5-minute activity periods for both morning and afternoon as if it were a meeting in your diary? You could just simply take a walk. You can still tone your abdominals even if you can't leave your chair by sitting upright with your shoulders drawn back. Take hold of the front edge of the chair with both hands for support, and now slowly lift your knees towards your chest. If you're downloading big files, use the time to get out of your seat and do a few squats. Have a stretch whenever you're talking to colleagues. If you're photocopying, try rear leg lifts. And can you hold mobile meetings, discussing work matters while you stroll around the building, or better still, outside, so you get the boost of fresh air and vitamin D from the natural light? Even if you can't leave your desk, a few seated stretches will still bring benefits. So try to repeat the following moves a few times during the day, holding each static position for around 15 seconds. In fact, you can do some of these with me right now. Firstly, let's work through the neck. So take the head, drop the ear down to the shoulder, and then take the opposite hand out to the side and press it away. You'll feel that stretch come down through the neck and into the shoulder. Remember, you need to hold these stretches for about 15 seconds, but we're going to move through them to give you a good range. Lift the head back up. This time we're going to twist the head. Twist to the side, releasing through the neck on the opposite side. You'll need to work on both sides. And again, remember, holding each stretch at the end position to ease the tension. And back to the center. This time we're going to lift the hands up in front of the chest, interlock the fingers, and you're going to keep the elbows bent, but reach the arms forwards, sort of really rounding the shoulders, dropping the chin down, and we're trying to stretch the shoulder blades apart here, really getting into the upper back, into the rhomboids, into the trapezius, really stretching through the muscles in the upper back. We'll ease out of that and we'll balance it by taking the hands round behind. You'll need to sit forward of the chair slightly here. Hands are in the lower back, and now we squeeze the shoulder blades together. Bring the elbows towards each other and you'll feel that stretch through the chest and through the front of the shoulders. Again, move into the position, hold your end position, feel the tension release, the muscles begin to stretch, and we'll ease back. We're going to take one arm across the chest, take the hand above the elbow and squeeze it in. And here we're getting a stretch into that shoulder. Remember, there's a lot of tension held in the shoulders, the neck, the upper back if we're working at a desk, so this is an ideal stretch. And ease that off. And one more final for the triceps. You're going to lift the hand up, drop the hand behind the head in between the shoulder blades, the other hand on the elbow, and gently press down so the fingertips are sliding down between the shoulder blades. And that's a little stretch for the triceps at the back of the arm. And ease that off. Remember, you've got to do both sides and hold those stretches for 15 seconds. At home, the major concern is sitting down in the evening to watch television. So, could we try these tactics? Stand up or march on the spot during the commercial breaks when you're watching. Purchase a piece of home cardio equipment so you can cycle, walk, or step while watching your favourite DVD. Do a few tricep dips off the end of the couch or chair while you're waiting for your favourite programme to begin. Stand on one leg and keep your balance while the theme tune plays at the start and the end of the show. Or if you're waiting for a particular show, switch to the music channel and dance along with whatever's playing for a few minutes. You could try a fitness ball, maybe one in the office and one at home. So instead of sitting on a chair to watch television, you can sit on a fitness ball and gently bounce. If you're reading, not watching television, put your book down, stand up, and walk on the spot for 2 minutes after reading every 6 pages. Keep a resistance band in the kitchen drawer so you can pump rubber while the dinner's cooking. But what about travelling? The dangers of flying were highlighted by the World Health Organization in suggesting that sitting on a plane for more than 4 hours can double the chance of you developing a blood clot. In fact, it's estimated that 5% of all air travellers suffer clots, although some of us may not even know it as they become reabsorbed within the circulatory system. For those people who are already suffering circulation problems and the elderly, the risk of clotting, and so the possibility of deep vein thrombosis, also called DVT, is increased. If a clot breaks away from the wall of the vein and travels within the bloodstream, it may cause a blockage or pulmonary embolism and possibly even lead to a heart attack. If you fly regularly then, it's important not to simply ignore leg pain or assume it's just cramp. The good news is that if caught early enough and treated with a blood thinning agent such as warfarin, clots can be relieved before becoming a problem. But here are a few tips you can deploy on your next flight to help you reduce the risk of DVT. Every hour, take a few minutes to circle your ankles, to flex and point your feet, to lift and lower your heels, and lift and lower your thighs. Stretch the calves by placing the toes on the footrest and then pressing the heels down to the floor, lengthening the back of the lower leg. Get up, walk the length of the aisles at regular intervals. And dehydration is thought to be a contributory factor, so drink plenty of water and try to avoid diuretics such as alcohol and coffee. The following exercises won't help reduce the risk of DVT directly, as they don't affect the lower limbs, but remembering the NEAT principle we talked about earlier, they'll certainly be of benefit to our health. We can start with a simple bicep curl, just bending the elbows, lifting the arms up to the shoulder and back down, just lightly clench the fists. And just about 5 repetitions of each exercise will keep the upper body mobile in your seat. And hold that there. Bring them up to chest level, take the elbows out to the side and push the hands forwards in front of the chest. Careful not to lock out your arms. Getting that range of movement through the shoulder. Good challenge for the core strength here as well. Keep your abdominals pulled in tight. And we're going to change that slightly. Take them out to the side, lift the hands up. Squeeze the elbows together in the center. Bring the elbows together. A little bit of work for the pectorals, but again working that mobility through the shoulders. And a chance to work on your core strength, keeping your abdominals in tight so you're sitting up away from the back of the seat. And hold them when they're in the center. Now we're going to press up to the top and back down with that little twist. Fabulous. Keeping those shoulders moving, keeping the arms moving. We're getting that extension through the elbow. We're getting a little bit of elevation through the shoulder girdle. And bring them back down, rest them on the top of your thighs, and then the head, we're just going to go from side to side, a little tilt, and across to the other side with a tilt, and across. And I'm going to do a little half circle now that goes from the side to the front, round to the other side, but then come straight back. Don't go back, don't tilt the head backwards. Tilting head backwards can squeeze the blood vessels at the back of the neck, also the nerves, so we don't tilt backwards necessarily, but we just roll from side to side. And whenever you think about it, if you can run through these exercises, it'll keep your upper body mobile. Probably the most restrictive of situations, when we're seated and have to remain so, is when we're driving. Now, clearly, there are no stretches or exercises that can be safely performed when your vehicle is moving. But just because your car comes to a stop doesn't mean your journey to a healthier you also has to stall. Next time you're stuck in a jam, try the following exercises. To exercise the chest, put the hands on the wheel at the numbers 3 and 9. Imagine you're working with a clock. Now we're doing isometric exercises here. You may remember from our lecture on muscles, that involves contracting the muscles but no movement. So what we do here is keeping the elbows slightly soft, squeeze the hands in towards each other. What we're doing here is working the pectoral muscles in the chest, squeezing the hands closer together, holding that contraction for about 5 seconds. And then we ease off. Now that's something you'll repeat. We're going to do it just once here, but you'll need to repeat that 3 times for each exercise. To work the upper back, we're going to lift the hands up now to the 1 and 11. And the arms are nearly straight again, and this time we're going to press down So the feeling is pressing down and we're working into the latissimus dorsi, the back of the armpit, large muscle in the upper back, as we start to press down. Again, holding that contraction for around 5 seconds and then easing off. We're taking the hands back to 3 and 9 for a little work on the shoulders. What we're doing here is trying to open out. So grab a hold of the wheel, and now, as if you're pulling it apart, the elbows are slightly lifted as if you're pulling it open. Trust me, you're not going to be strong enough to pull the steering wheel apart. Again, around 5 seconds, feeling that work in the shoulders, holding that contraction before we release. We're going to work into the biceps and triceps now, and for these exercises, you need to move yourself forward slightly on your seat so that you're towards the front of the seat now. We're going to put the hands underneath the wheel at 5 and 7. And now the aim is to lift upwards, as if you're lifting your palms upwards, starting to work into the biceps on the front of the arm. Hold that contraction. The stronger the contraction, the better. Try not to hold your breath on these isometric exercises. And release that off. Remember, you're going to repeat each exercise around 3 times. Take the hands up to the top to the 1 and 11 again. This time the elbows drop in, and now we're pressing down with the palms. So now this is slightly different than the upper back where the arm was long. We're now working through a bent elbow, trying to straighten the arm out, working into the triceps, that problem area at the back of the arm. And we'll ease that off. We can relax the hands now. What we're going to do is a little bit of work for the gluteals, for the hamstrings at the back of the thighs. And the way we do that is simply pressing into your heels and trying to lift your backside as if you're lifting it just slightly off the seat. You won't be able to leave the seat, but that squat position, really pressing the heels down into the floor, will enable you to get some work for the glutes and into the hamstrings. And then finally, we lift up the heels onto the balls of the feet as high as we can, and then press the balls of the feet down into the floor. Really push down with the balls of the feet, working into the calves. And ease the heels down. And a good idea to finish, rest the hands on top of the thighs and just take a few deep breaths. Of course, as a passenger, you're not bound to only move when the car doesn't. So try some of the stretching and mobilizing exercises proposed earlier for when you're at your workstation or sitting on a plane. In addition, you can make good use of the time by relieving tension and stress with a self-massage. Here's a seated manipulation routine for you to try right now while you're watching this, and then to take away and use in the office, on the plane, and in the passenger seat. Let's start on the right side. Use your right hand and find the trapezius muscle, which is just below the base of your skull. Tilt your head towards the left shoulder, and while you press deep into the muscle with the right hand, slowly drag the fingers down and out towards the right shoulder. And repeat this movement about 5 times. And switch over to the other side. From the base of the skull, press into the muscle and drag down. Keep pressure on with the fingertips. To massage the shoulders, place your left hand on your right shoulder, and with your right hand, cup the bottom of the left elbow. This will support it and keep it stable as you massage. Keep the fingers of your left hand together and press them deep into the shoulder muscle. And now, gently rock the fingers into the muscle forwards and backwards for a few seconds. So rather than squeeze and release, keep the squeeze on, but rock forwards and backwards. And then just change the position slightly so we get a different portion of the muscle. Squeeze it and rock forwards and backwards. Keep changing the position so that we cover the entire muscle. Really getting into the deltoid. And we can change sides. So reach to the shoulder, cup the elbow, squeeze, and rock forwards and backwards. And moving on to the upper back, particularly the latissimus dorsi, we're going to lift the left hand up, put it behind the head. Elbow will be pointing up towards the ceiling. Reach your right hand across your chest, reaching into the back of the armpit, into the latissimus dorsi. Now squeeze the fingers together in the right hand and massage downwards. Keep squeezing and move down, squeeze and move down, squeeze and move down, all the way down to the hip. And once you get there, take it back up and start again. From the top, squeeze, 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 and keep moving down. And again, we'll repeat this 5 times. When you've done that, we'll change sides. Really squeeze the fingers in and move down. Around 5 repetitions is your target. Now, it's true to say that just about all of us, whatever our vocations or hobbies, can benefit from loosening the lower back. So to achieve this, we've got a little tool. We're going to use a tennis ball for this exercise, any kind of ball that gives you a little bit of resistance, that's not too squidgy. So we're going to lie on your back, you're going to bend the knees, and you're going to put the ball under your lower back. Now lie yourself down onto the floor, and all we're going to do here is gently, using the hands and the feet, allow yourself to rock side to side, forwards and backwards. It's really quite random, the movement's up to you. Just get that little roll about, take your time, nice and slowly, rolling forwards and backwards, side to side. Just getting that little massage effect all the way through the lower back. And you can use as much or as little of your body weight as you wish by putting a little more weight on the hands or the feet, varying that position. And let's move on to the hamstrings now, particularly important for any of you who are runners. Tight hamstrings are a common problem. So what we're going to do here is lying on your back. You're going to bring your right leg over the top of the left. Fabulous. You're going to place the hands on the thigh, and you're going to press the fingers into the middle of the hamstring, thumbs by the knee. And as you press the fingers in, you now start to drag the fingers back towards the hip, really pressing into that hamstring muscle all the time as we're doing it. Then take it back up and start again. We press the fingers into the back of the leg, and we drag the hands up the thigh, applying the pressure as we go. And still on the hamstring, moving on to the other side. Beautiful. Pressing those fingers in and dragging down. And switching back to the other side, hamstring again, because this is a tight area. So same position, but this time what you're going to do is dig the fingers in, and you're going to rub side to side. And then move down slightly, rub side to side, and keep moving side to side with the hands, working up and down the thigh. Changing over to the other side after a couple of minutes. And to balance out, we'll move on to the quadriceps now, onto the front of the thigh. So if you sit yourself up for this one, and the leg can be out in front. So let's take the right leg first of all. What you're going to do is put one hand on top near the hip, and then put the other hand on top and press down into the palm. So that gives us that extra pressure. Now we begin to slide down towards the knee. Slowly sliding down towards the knee, keeping the pressure on. You really need two hands to do this. And then come back up to the top and start again. So make sure you've got plenty of pressure into the muscle, and gently move down from the top of the thigh towards the kneecap. And we change the angle slightly, so we move a little bit to the outside, a little bit closer to the middle. And that way we'll really get into all four of those quadriceps muscles, obviously four being where the term quadricep comes from. Let's take the right leg first and bring it up. You're going to wrap the hands around below the knee, digging the thumbs into the calf. What we're going to do then is begin to slide down, keeping the pressure with the thumbs into the calf muscle and down into the Achilles. Slide it down, and then work your way back up. So literally pressing the thumb in, sliding down towards the Achilles, and then sliding back up. And then we'll swap over to the other side. We'll go back to the other side, but this time digging the thumbs in. What you're going to do is press them into the middle and draw them apart. Work down, press in, draw them apart. Press in, draw them apart, like you're really kneading that calf muscle. A couple of minutes on each leg. We're now going to take one foot over the top of the other and simply get some rotation through the ankle. And let's keep alternating directions. So one way, circle back the other. Just really release that pressure through the ankle. And hold that there, keep the foot there. What we're going to do now is dig the thumbs into the sole and then start to slide the length of the foot up to the end. Do that a couple more times. Start from the heel, really press in, work right the way through the longitudinal arch all the way up to the top. And this time when you get there, just start to spread the toes apart. Pull them apart and work your way through each pairing. Releasing that tension through the feet. And then when you've done that, we'll swap over to the other side. And finally into the forearms, last exercise, so sitting comfortably. What we're going to do is turn one hand up. Let's take the thumb, pressing in, starting just above the elbow. We'll start to circular massage as we work our way down towards the wrist. Really dig the thumb in, and then we'll come back up and do it again. Really press in, little circles, work your way down to the bottom, and again. And then to get into the front, we're going to turn it over. You're going to dig the thumb in and then just simply contract and relax the muscle by clenching and opening the fist. Move it down, press in, and then you'll feel the muscle move under the thumb. Then move it down a little lower and do it again. All you need to do is really press with the thumb and let that contraction of the muscle do the massage. And swapping over to the other side. First of all, the palms up. Little pressing in with the thumbs, circular movements, working your way down. And then when you turn it over, dig the thumb in and open and clench the fist. Move it down a little, press it in, and relax your hands down. And there's your total body self-massage. Now, you don't need to be a genius to link long periods of sitting with poor posture. And in our look at the spine, we established that poor posture is a crucial factor in back pain issues. A big problem with being seated is that it's too easy to switch off your core muscles and your alignment suffers. Take a look around an office. It won't take you too long to spot someone with a disengaged core manifesting itself by the way of rounded shoulders and a forward chin position. One surprising cause of this actually might be poor breathing technique. In previous lectures, we touched on the concept of homeostasis, which is the body's natural desire to return itself to optimum functioning, usually via subconscious actions. When breathing is not effective, the nervous system will attempt to bring about changes that allow for more oxygen to be taken on board and then delivered to the cells within the body as they need this life-giving fuel. Unfortunately, this can initiate changes in posture. Let's just remind ourselves of the basics of breathing mechanics. We investigated these in our lecture on this topic. Whilst the diaphragm plays a vital role in contracting to give more space in the thoracic cavity, so producing a pressure drop that leads to inhalation, its action is supported by the pectoralis minor and the sternocleidomastoid muscles. These effectively lift the rib cage. If breathing's not adequate, the nervous system will influence posture to put these two muscles in a position that will allow them to better assist respiration. In other words, putting them in a position where it's easier for them to lift the rib cage. So, moving the shoulders and the chin forwards actually results in these two muscles having a better line of pull. Rather than pulling slightly backwards, they're now pulling directly upwards, and that helps to expand the rib cage and so create more space for air to enter. The greater concern is that as these muscles work harder, they also become stronger and stiffer, so it's harder for them to return to a more natural posture. Now, I recommend that you have a look at Lecture 6 for some breathing exercises to overcome this. So now you know the dangers associated with long seated periods, and you're armed with a wide range of tactics you can deploy on a daily basis, whether at work, home, or on the journey between the two. You can start to make changes today that will improve your health for tomorrow. It's now a proven fact that too much time on your backside will literally shorten your life. But just like the growing numbers of employees at both Google and Facebook who have traded their traditional workstations for standing desks, you don't have to take it sitting down. A few years ago, the Madrid fashion show hit the headlines for taking a stand on the issue of stick-thin models by not permitting any girls with a body mass index of less than 18, i.e. below the healthy range, to take to the catwalk. This was seen as a major step forward, not just for the sake of the model's health, but also for the legions of girls across the world who see them as role models. Whilst the pressure to be thin and the trend for size zero and the stigma occasionally attached to being overweight are unwelcome attitudes held within certain population subsets, the truth is that a wealth of research has proved that excess body fat does carry an increased health risk. So more importantly, for health rather than aesthetic reasons, weight management is an important issue, and particularly weight loss in light of the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey that calculated that 34% of American adults are overweight. 33% are obese, and a further 6% are extremely obese. The leading health policy journal, Health Affairs, estimated that medical costs associated with obesity total an incredible $147 billion in 2008. The aim of this presentation is to analyse the role of exercise as a tool to achieve weight loss, helping you to understand how and why it works. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll equip you with the vital knowledge to ensure you win at losing. Firstly, since the word obese appears so regularly in mainstream press and on television, and even in everyday conversation, it seems pertinent to start with a definition. Body mass index, or BMI, is calculated as your weight in kilograms divided by the square of your height in meters. For example, a person who is 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing 125 pounds, will have a BMI of 18.5. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention suggest that a BMI of 18.5 to 24.9 is a healthy range, with 25 to 29.9 being overweight and more than 30 being classed as obese. Be aware, however, this is merely a guideline that correlates the amount of body fat in the general population, and athletes or heavily muscled individuals will score falsely high on this scale. So why is it that the percentage of overweight is growing, literally in all senses? It actually comes down to a very simple mathematical equation. The sum of the calories in minus the sum of the calories out. If more calories are taken on board in the form of food than are used up through activity and metabolism, the result will be weight gain. Let's consider a specific example taken from an article by Doug McGuff. An hour of jogging will burn only about 150 calories above your metabolic rate, but it actually only takes 20 seconds to eat 150 calories of cookies. Fortunately, however, dietary restriction and increased exercise will lead to a calorie deficit and so to weight loss. Unfortunately, however, this technological age in which we now live has led to a predominantly sedentary lifestyle for most of us, and essential movement in everyday tasks has become somewhat minimized. When this is combined with the incredibly easy access to calorie-dense foodstuffs such as fast food, then it's easy to understand how the equation we just mentioned works against us, leading to weight problems. We've evolved as a species that was occasionally threatened with famine, and that required considerable physical effort to acquire food, as a result of which we developed an ability to take in and store food in the form of fat tissue. Now we can see how readily available food and the removal of the necessity to hunt for it have led to an expanding global waistband. One surprising effect on your body mass turns out to be the amount you sleep. So I asked Professor Heller about this, since sleep is his primary area of research. So let's go to him to see what he had to say.
So there is a relationship between sleep and weight gain. And the relationship is short sleep tends to correlate with excess weight gain. A large epidemiological study was done in which all sorts of characteristics of lifestyle were compared to body composition, percent body fat. And it was found that everything else being equal, individuals who fell into the short sleep category, people not getting more than 6 hours of sleep a night, they tended to have excess body mass. Whereas those individuals who were getting 8 or more hours of sleep a night, they were the individuals who had the lowest percent body fat. Now, you might ask why that might be so. Well, one of the factors that perhaps comes into play is when you eat. People who are short sleepers, who are up late at night, they tend to snack late at night, they tend to eat late at night. And in a different study, it's been shown that calories, everything else being equal, calories consumed after 8 p.m. have a greater impact on body mass than calories consumed earlier in the day.
So when you eat and how much you sleep are factors then in being overweight. But those are largely choices we can influence unless you work a late shift, which is a high-risk category because you're off your natural circadian rhythm. Clearly, there are other contributors to being overweight, genetics often being cited. Now, there's no doubt that heredity plays a role in our physical makeup, or rather it can explain disorders such as Bardet-Biedl, Prader-Willi and Cushing's syndromes. All of these can contribute to increased weight. But it's widely accepted this cannot account for a significant portion of the obese, hence the previously mentioned factors having more impact than genetics. Let's consider gender next. In general, women are known to carry more body fat than men, but usually around their hips and thighs, known as the gynoid or pear-shaped body, while men's fat deposits tend to be around the tummy, referred to as an android or apple shape. Now, please note, these are just sweeping generalizations with much variance about these norms on both sides. It is well documented, unfortunately for the men out there, that the increased abdominal fat is likely to lead to a greater risk of cardiovascular disease. So how do we store fat? We store fat in the body in the form of triglycerides. As the name suggests, this is made up of 3 fatty acid molecules found within specific fat cells known as adipocytes. There's also a small amount residing within the muscle cells, ready to be used as fuel for exercise, although most will come via the bloodstream. The release of fat from storage to be used as fuel is regulated by 2 enzymes, hormone-sensitive lipase and lipoprotein lipase. The first of these is located in the fat cell and acts to break apart the triglycerides, so releasing the 3 fatty acids into the bloodstream. This is influenced by the hormone epinephrine, which increases in concentration during cardio exercise, and also the responsiveness of the hormone-sensitive lipase increases at this time. Now, interestingly, a training effect of regular exercise is this phenomenon improves. So as we get fitter, the enzyme responds to lower levels of epinephrine and so more readily breaks apart the triglyceride to be used as energy. Conversely, the lipoprotein lipase is found on the walls of the blood vessels and acts as a transporter, mopping up triglycerides in the blood and taking them to storage sites to be used as fuel later. Exercise, especially when combined with reduced calorie intake through sensible eating, is the optimum approach to sustained weight loss, not only decreasing body fat, but also enhancing cardiovascular profile, improving insulin sensitivity, and lowering blood pressure. The good news is, surprisingly, weight loss of only 5% has been shown to have a positive effect on cardiovascular disease. Just 150 minutes of exercise per week typically leads to around a weight loss of 2 kilograms, and 420 minutes per week results in a considerable drop of 5 kilograms if combined with a sensible calorie restriction. Even something as simple as low-intensity walking can be of benefit to the overweight, as they're able to get their heart rate up to critical levels and prompt the positive responses we talked of earlier. However, obese persons have been known to sometimes suffer pain in the lower limbs when walking, so cycling, swimming, aqua exercise, rowing are also strongly recommended. Losing weight through exercise can be somewhat confusing, as cardio machines in the gym recommend inbuilt fat-burning programs at around 60 to 70% of your maximum working heart rate, which you'll remember from earlier in the series. We calculate from taking your age from 220. Although this is a fairly low intensity, it's probably just a brisk walk for most of us. Now, this is based on the premise that at lower intensities, the majority of the calories burned are from fat stores rather than carbohydrate that's stored in the muscles and the liver. It's indeed true that as the intensity increases, a lower proportion of the fuel will be provided by fat. But the important factor to take into consideration here is the total number of calories expended. So, a vigorous workout may burn a lesser percentage of calories from fat stores, but the total amount could be greater than working out for the same length of time at a lower intensity. So, as your fitness level starts to improve through regular activity, your ability to achieve and maintain higher intensities will also improve, and therefore your capacity to burn fat during exercise will increase. It is important to begin exercise gently, particularly if you've not done it for a while, but accelerated results will come from increasing the intensity of exercise, so you should try to do that as soon as possible. Of course, I strongly recommend that you consult your physician before embarking on a new exercise regime, particularly if you have any concerns about your current health status. Now, there's another common misconception in this area, that fat burning during exercise only begins after a set period, usually quoted as being around 20 minutes, although sometimes 30 minutes is this magic threshold. Certainly, fat metabolism is a slow starter, with transport to and utilization in the muscles requiring time to work effectively. But after a while, the switch takes place from carbohydrate to fat for fuel. Interestingly, this switch occurs sooner for fitter people, again supporting my previous statement that the fitter you are, the more fat you will be able to burn during exercise. Studies have shown there are a number of physiological adaptations as a result of cardio exercise that help to shift body fat. Let's have a look at these. They include oxygen supplies increasing with regular exercise, helping to burn fat more efficiently. An enhanced sensitivity to epinephrine results in greater release of fat stores. The amount of fat that enters the muscle to fuel movement can increase. And the mitochondria, where fat burning actually takes place in the muscle cells, they increase in number and size. So the combined result of these then supports the earlier hypothesis that regular exercise helps us to become better at using up our fat stores. An exercise for fat loss program will depend on two things. Now, we've encountered these several times in other presentations in this series, namely frequency and duration. Since the aim is to burn as many calories as possible, ultimately, exercising more often and for longer will help to tip that energy balance equation in our favor, that is, towards a negative calorie deficit. Here are two examples of how important these variables are when applied to two different exercise regimes. Let's consider 30 minutes brisk walk 3 times per week. That will result in a burn of 600 calories. However, 45 minutes brisk walk 5 times per week will result in a calorie burn of 1,500 calories. Now, although the exact numbers will be dependent on people's specific body weight and walking technique, we can calculate from this that the first example, it will take us approximately 13 weeks to burn off 1 kilogram of body fat, whereas the second approach cuts this down to only around 5 weeks. When considering exercise for weight loss, thought should be given to the influence of what exercise physiologists refer to as excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC, which is calorie consumption immediately after exercise has ceased. It's the afterburn, if you like. And this is due to the increased metabolic effect of your body removing waste products from the cells and then refueling. Clearly, if this can be maximized, it will lead to a boost in the calories burned, even though you could actually be relaxing back at home after your sweaty endeavors. It'll probably come as no surprise to learn that EPOC is dependent upon the intensity of the workout. So the tougher the workout then, the greater the afterburn, with 70% of your maximum working heart rate being an absolute minimum. So this allows us to now summarize exercise for weight loss as follows. Fat can be burned at any exercise intensity, and low-intensity exercise is recommended for those with a low fitness level, as this is more likely to encourage you to stick at it. Whilst the percentage of fat compared to carbohydrate being used as a fuel source varies with intensity, the most important figure is the total number of calories consumed. Frequency and duration need to be high enough to have a significant impact on reducing body fat. And remember that EPOC contributes significantly to calorie expenditure and is greater for higher intensity exercise sessions. Importantly, remember fat loss involves creating a negative energy balance. And although exercise can make a big difference to the calories used up, clearly weight loss will only be achieved if we don't eat too much, so putting too much energy in. Whilst people will often equate weight loss exercise to cardio options such as cycling, running, swimming, it's fair to say that regular resistance training results in a short-term boost in fat burning after exercise, but a long-term increase in muscle tissue, which then has an associated rise in your resting metabolic rate. This implies then that you'll burn even more calories just when you're sleeping. For this reason, the best exercise prescription is to combine intense cardio and resistance training modes. Since low-calorie diets lead to slowing the metabolism, resistance training is actually vital as a tool to counter this, and so is highly valuable to help you maintain weight loss progress if you're combining exercise and food restriction. To try to quantify the value of resistance training, it's useful to know that a kilogram of extra lean tissue will lead to an additional 100 calories being burned every single day. If you consider that a resistance training program can reasonably be expected to add 3 to 5 kilograms of muscle mass, this equates to using up an extra 300 to 500 calories per day just in doing everyday activity. This could even add up, think about this, to a considerable 9 to 15 kilograms of fat loss over a year. The important thing to remember here is that you get out of exercise what you put in. So resistance training, like the cardio, needs to be intense and progressive. Weights should be selected to produce a momentary muscular fatigue at around 12 to 15 repetitions, and then increased once it becomes too easy. At this point, having discussed exercise in some detail, I wish to address a myth you may well have encountered regarding the suggestion that exercising in the morning on an empty stomach is a great way to shed fat. Research at the University of Leuven in Belgium confirmed this will actually work, as fasting, which is essentially what happens overnight as we sleep, leads to an increased adrenaline level and reduced insulin levels, creating an environment that is more conducive to the breakdown of fat for energy. The study revealed that those who exercise without eating beforehand do burn significantly more fat than those who had a pre-workout snack. However, be warned, the fasters were not able to perform intense training as well as the counterparts who were fueled up, according to another study in the Medicine, Science and Sports Exercise Journal. So before you set your alarm for an early morning jog before breakfast, be aware that not everybody's in agreement about this area, and some experts would suggest that exercising with low blood sugar could lead to you becoming dizzy, coordinated. It could even increase the risk of injury. It'll certainly feel somewhat uncomfortable exercising when you're feeling hungry and may lead to you subconsciously eating more afterwards than you actually need. So beware. Now we've established the impact of exercise upon weight loss. Let's consider a few specific approaches that will produce results. High-intensity interval training requires 10 sets of 4 minutes at 95% of maximum working heart rate with 2 minutes rest in between. Absolutely vital tool in your armory. A resistance training circuit performing perhaps 20 repetitions at each of 12 weight training stations with little or no rest, and the stations ideally should alternate between upper and lower body for a good calorie burn. We could try sprint interval training, which involves full-on effort for 30 seconds, followed by 4 minutes of light exercise, repeated 6 times. Another technique is fartlek training, interspersing continuous steady pace with quicker bursts of varying duration, for example, 2, 4, 6 minutes in a sort of an unstructured format. Metabolic conditioning is the idea of working continuous cardio at a moderate intensity of around 70% of your maximum working heart rate for around 40 to 60 minutes. And then step up interval training, starting at an easy cardio pace, the speed increasing perhaps every 4 minutes by about 15% until you reach the set target of between 20 to 60 minutes, depending on your current fitness level. As we start to get a little fitter, another technique is near maximal training. 5 sets of 5 minutes at 95% of your maximum working heart rate, followed by 5 minutes at just 50%. So there are a few different formats there we can use to achieve our weight loss goals. Encouragingly, both research and anecdotal evidence suggest that most of us are capable of successfully losing weight, with the bigger challenge being to maintain our new weight. A study in 2009 revealed that regular exercise can be linked to sustained weight after a reduction, proposing that more is better and a target of 40 minutes per day will prevent weight gain. Using a common sense approach, it's not too difficult to identify critical times for relapse, enabling tactics to be developed to avoid such. The triggers to weight regain can be divided into 3 distinct categories that can be subdivided as follows. Let's think about lifestyle first of all. Taking part in sport, especially team games, can be a great motivator to remaining regularly active. So hanging up your cleats, spikes, sneakers, gloves, or whatever can lead to a dramatic reduction in activity. Instead of ceasing sport, a sensible approach is to think about switching from one sport to a more gentle option. Believe it or not, marriage can be a problem, particularly for men, as it's commonly accompanied by a reduction in energy levels and exercise levels and an increase in food intake. The key is to be conscious of these 2 factors, retaining your current commitment to activity and keeping a food diary to help avoid more regular eating and increased portion sizes. Those who give up smoking may find that weight increases as nicotine speeds up metabolic rate, so withdrawing it causes a slowing. Regular exercise and 5 to 6 small meals rather than 2 to 3 large meals each day are both tactics that will help to give the metabolism a boost. It goes without saying the festive season is fraught with danger in terms of the risk of putting back lost weight, but it doesn't have to be. On nights out, alternate between an alcoholic and a soft drink. At parties, stand away from the buffet table to avoid constantly grazing. Take the skin off your turkey, steam the vegetables at Christmas lunch. These are all simple tactics that will allow you to get through Yuletide without storing your saddlebags with enough fuel to keep you going until Easter. After lifestyle, let's look at stress. Restrained eaters can sometimes worry less about their weight when under stress and then throw caution to the wind regarding food intake. So efforts should be made to try to adhere to regular patterns. Bereavement can lead to comfort eating and a lack of motivation to exercise. At this time, it's important to remember that exercise brings an endorphin release that can lift your mood, so it's actually a great coping mechanism. Having mentioned marriage previously, divorce now can be associated with feelings of depression and a break in routine that affects both eating and activity patterns. There's a school of thought that suggests women cope better than men with this. Either way, commitment to maintaining routine is vital here. So after lifestyle and stress, our third category is hormones. Changes linked to menopause are known to generally lead to a shift in body composition. So resistance training exercises, as we mentioned earlier, are particularly useful at this time to both elevate your metabolism, but also to help increase your bone mineral density, so reducing the risk of osteoporosis. Pregnancy will obviously lead to an increase in body weight, but it's important to try to restrict this to around 10 kilos. Specific exercise guidelines can be found in our separate lecture in this series, addressing both ante and postnatal periods. Fat cells are known to multiply during growth spurts and are then retained for life, early puberty being one of these periods. It's important to remain active and avoid a diet that includes too much junk food at this time. At the other end of the spectrum, girls who crash diet risk slowing their metabolic rate, resulting in the same outcome. It's well documented that a recurring problem is not only regaining lost weight after a concentrated effort, but actually putting on more than was lost and ending up heavier than before the campaign began. Those who successfully keep the weight off are noted to exhibit a common number of characteristics, supported by the National Weight Control Registry study of 784 people who had lost at least 60 pounds and then kept it off for 5 years. So what were these characteristics? Exercising for 250 minutes per week, but remember we can break that down to piecemeal fashion. Frequently stepping on the scales. They never skipped breakfast, and they maintained a written record of their weight loss progress and a food diary. No examination of weight loss issues would be complete without mention of cellulite. So here's a brief explanation of what it is, why we get it, and a summary of what we can do about it. Although rarely seen in males, it's estimated that 85% of females exhibit the dreaded dimple effect somewhere on their body. Cellulite is a result of fat protruding from the subcutaneous layer into the dermis or skin due to laxity in the connective tissue within the skin. Liposuction, creams, injected products, massage, and suction treatments produce varying results, from some anecdotal reports of amazing improvements down to, sadly, others declaring that they made the appearance even worse. Newer treatments such as laser and low-energy shockwave therapies have produced some very encouraging results. But the good news is that exercise, there it is again, can help to tackle cellulite in two ways. By helping to reduce the presence of body fat, but also toning the muscles, as slack tone in the muscles around the hips and thighs particularly add to the unwanted visual appearance associated with cellulite. So helping the nation to reclaim its waist is not an easy task and requires the combined efforts of politicians defining public health strategy, the medical fraternity treating weight-related conditions, and the fitness industry in providing both a preventive and a reactive exercise prescription. Ultimately, though, a pandemic such as obesity can be broken down to the decisions of individuals. I hope you now feel confident that that you have the requisite knowledge of exercise for weight loss to make the right choices for you today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. A short spell of surfing the shopping channels and you'd be forgiven for drawing the conclusion the whole world has gone ab crazy. And this is supported by the cover stories of many of the mainstream health, fitness and lifestyle magazines on the shelves in the newsagents. The truth is that in my 30 years of teaching fitness in clubs, hotels, gyms, spas, corporate facilities with sports teams, the question I'm most often asked is how to achieve a flat tummy by females or how to get a rippling six-pack by the guys. The perfect stomach remains the most significant aesthetic indicator of fitness and continues to be the focus of advertising campaigns for well-known brands and a multitude of products and services. In this lecture, we'll look closely at the abdominal muscles, whether our expectations are realistic, and explore a range of exercises to target this most important area. The starting point then, when looking at the trunk, is to establish the difference between mobilizer muscles that bring about movement and stabilizer muscles that work to fix body parts in place. So here's a practical way for you to understand this. You can actually do this with me. I'm going to stand with my feet about hip width apart. You could even do this sitting. What we're going to do is put one hand here, just where your ribs meet, one hand just below the belly button. And the trick here is, can you get your hands closer together without leaning forwards? And what we're actually doing there is squeezing the abdominal muscles together, bringing your ribs down to your hips. Okay, so that's one exercise. Secondly, I'm going to stand on one leg and catch the ball. Now, what I had to do there was to use my stabilizer muscles to lock on in the center to hold my trunk steady so that when the ball hit me, I didn't fall over, fortunately. Now let's look at these two muscle groups in a little bit more detail. Firstly, the mobilizers we spoke about. The rectus abdominis is the most visible, stretching from what we call the xiphoid process where the ribs meet, and the sternum and the ribs 5 to 7, down to the pelvis via a sheath or aponeurosis that joins to the symphysis pubis, that aponeurobis we talked about in the lecture on muscles. It's divided by tendon insertions that run across it, but also, more noticeably, centrally from top to bottom, the linea alba, to give the appearance of separate blocks. And interestingly, these divisions are not uniform, so you may see in some people an 8-pack rather than a 6-pack, or perhaps blocks that don't line up but are actually staggered. And that's purely down to genetics rather than a response to working out. Now, when contracted, this muscle, like any other, draws its ends closer together, so the ribs will move closer to the hips. Moving to the side, the oblique muscles, the external obliques being larger and running from ribs 5 to 12 down to the iliac crest, or the highest point on the hip, and also partly into the linea alba at the center. And also then there's the internal oblique muscles, positioned between ribs 8 to 12 and the linea alba itself. And these work in tandem to assist the rectus abdominis in drawing the ribs and hips closer together. But also they have two other functions: to rotate the trunk and also to laterally flex. Now, interestingly, when we're bending sideways, the two obliques on the same side will work together. Yeah? But due to their diagonal alignment, this way and this way, the external oblique on one side works in harmony with the internal oblique on the other side when we're doing that rotating movement. So now let's look at the key stabilizer muscles. And these we have to go a little bit deeper to find. So beneath the above three muscles we've just talked about, we have the transversus abdominis running like a cummerbund from what's called the thoracolumbar fascia at the back and the iliac crest through the lower 6 ribs and then into this linea alba, this tendinous line at the center. It's only got one action, and that action is to pull in, compressing the abdominal cavity, and so it creates pressure that effectively, as we pull in, splints the lumbar spine. Now, the internal oblique muscles, that smaller of the oblique muscles, can actually assist in creating this intra-abdominal pressure through its attachment also to the thoracolumbar fascia. It's not direct, it attaches through something called a lateral raphe, but it still has that effect of helping to pull in. And more detail on this we'll talk about in the lecture on the spine. So clearly then, if we have two different groups of muscles, we're going to need two distinctly different sets of exercises to tone them. And this is often where confusion arises, as selecting the wrong exercises will mean you may not achieve your goals. You won't be surprised to learn that the mobilizers require movement to train them, whilst the stabilizers require static or isometric contractions, no movement, that challenge you to hold a position. Let's look at examples of the two. And you can join me here, you just need enough space to lie down on the floor. So ensure you can get in a position so that you can turn your head to the side and still see what we're doing. And you can join us in trying these exercises. So we've reached an important part of the series now, because this is where we begin to get into our actual exercise. And you'll notice that what I'm going to do through the workout is continually refer back to the knowledge that you've just acquired. So look out for little references back to lectures we did earlier, but also little graphics to help you understand, to help you visualize the muscles you're working. Talking of working muscles, let's get started with our abdominals. And we've got two different muscle groups, remember, we're working here, the mobilizers and the stabilizers. So let's start with our mobilizers. These are the muscles that move you. So I'm going to start with a couple of very basic exercises, the sit-up and the reverse curl, but I'm going to work with some different timing. So hopefully you're ready to go with this. Just a couple of tips on the sit-up technique. Make sure you're keeping your elbows back, not pulling with the arms. Rest the head into the hands so that you can support the weight of your head. And also be aware of having a neutral or comfortable spine position. And you'll notice that Jen's brought her feet up here, knees bent, and that helps to keep that nice, relaxed lower spine position. So hands behind your head for me, please. So we're looking for our single sit-ups first of all. So I'm going to ask you to just do those little sit-ups and back down for me in a nice comfortable rhythm. Beautiful. So a little visualization helps here when we're working the moving muscles, the mobilizers. Try to imagine your abdominal muscles like a spring and think about squeezing that spring together. So you're trying to bring your ribs closer to your hips. Can I get a couple more, please? Fabulous, and take a rest there. And you'll notice that Jen's breathing out as she comes up and in as she goes down. It's not absolutely crucial, but it does help to exhale on the exertion, and the hardest part is actually lifting. But whatever you do, don't hold your breath. So what I'm going to do now is change the timing. I'm going to ask you to sit up and down at half that speed. So what we're going to do is sit up and down and down. And again, sit up and down. So you're going much slower. Keep going. Up and down. Really focus on sit up and up. Getting that maximal contraction. Squeeze and down and down. Relax your head and neck and up and down and down. Keep the elbows back. Up and down. Try not to hold your breath. Sit up and take a little rest there. Well done. Have a quick rest. Okay. Let's take this one step further, and I'll explain in a minute why we're doing this. I'm going to ask you this time to sit up for 3 counts and down for 1, so you'll go up, and then down for 1. Okay, get ready? Here we go. Sit up and down. And again, sit up and down. Sit up and down. And again, sit up and down. Take a quick rest there. Hopefully you're beginning to feel that getting a little bit more difficult as we go along. Just to be sure, we're going to slow it down even further. I'm going to ask you to sit up for 7 counts and down for 1. So take a deep breath first, get ready to go. Here we go. We go up and 5 and 6 and 7 and down. And again, sit 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Can we do 2 more of those, please? Sit up and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Just 1 more. Let's go. You can do it. Sit up and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7, and take a quick rest there. Just have a little rest. So what we're doing there is by slowing down the count, I'm actually forcing you to recruit all the muscle fibers in the abdominals. The slow twitch fibers will work first, and then they'll start to exhaust. So then you have to recruit some of the fast twitch fibers. And then as they begin to exhaust, as we slow down again, you recruit the rest of the fast twitch fibers. So we get to that point of momentary muscular fatigue, which is what we need. We need overload for all the muscles. We can use that same timing on the reverse curl. You may have noticed on that exercise, you're working predominantly the upper part of the abdominals. What we're going to do now is switch this to the lower part. So if we can take the hands down by the side, bring the knees up to the chest and cross your feet over for me, please. Important point here, drop the heels down. What I don't want you to do is swing with the legs. Now, this is only a very small movement. All that's going to happen is you're going to bring your knees a little closer to your chest, lift your hips off the mat and lower it back down, but don't swing the legs. So when you come back down, don't let this drop too low, yeah? So it's a squeeze in the lower abdominals that lifts your hips off the floor. So we'll do the same thing. Let's work with our single count first of all. So we'll lift up and down, and up and down. Fabulous. Now you may find in this one, keep going, up and down, and you keep going, up and down. You may notice a little bit of strain in the neck. Try to keep the neck relaxed on this one. Try consciously to think about that by drawing your shoulders down. You may use your hands at the side for a little bit of balance, but the important thing is don't squeeze with the feet upwards, yeah? Up and down and up. And take a little rest. So we'll move straight on to what we did before. 2 counts up, 2 counts down. So we'll go up and down and down. We go up and down and down. And again, sit up and down. One more of those, please. We go up and down. Hopefully you're feeling that in the abdominals. We're going to move straight on now. 3 counts up, 1 count down. We sit up, and down. And again, go up. How you doing at home? We go up. I hope you're still with me. We go up, and hold it there. Next one, hopefully you remember now, we're on to 7s. 7 counts up, 1 count down. Come on, be strong, we can do this. Let's go. Up, 2, 3, 4, come on. 5, 6, 7, and down. One more, go up. 2, get those hips off the floor. And 4, and 5, and 6, and 7. 2 more of those, let's go. Sit up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can we do just one more? Let's go. Up, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and take a quick rest there. Well done, well done. Okay, now remember, I'm doing a certain number of repetitions here, but you might need to build up to those. If you found that easy, you can always throw in a couple of extra repetitions. But the secret there is taking 2 very common exercises, the sit-up and the reverse curl, that will target the upper part and then the lower part of the abdominals, but to vary the timing. And what that will do is force us to recruit all the muscle fibers, so we'll get that improved tone. Okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to shift from the upper and lower abdominals into the obliques at the side. Now, the important thing here is you may have seen this exercise bringing your elbow across to your opposite knee, this sort of twisting motion, which indeed will get a little bit of rotation through the spine. However, what generally happens is most of the movement comes from the arm and from the leg, and so we end up not getting much benefit for the waist. So what we're going to do with this is I'm going to change it slightly. So when we do knee to elbow, I'm going to ask you to do the same side, the same knee to the same elbow. So this is what I mean, hands behind. So it's 4 movements again. So we're going to sit up, twist, back, and down. Sit up and twist and back and down. Beautiful. Up and twist. The same elbow to knee. Sit up and twist. And what I also want you to do is a little tilt. Up and tilt to the side as you do it. Sit up, tilt with that. Back and down. Fabulous. Up and tilt and back. Now we're getting a little bit more rotation, and that work has got to come from the oblique muscles. It's not coming now from the arm and the leg. we go. Sit up and tilt and back. We're looking at those oblique muscles. Keep going, sit up and tilt. Keep breathing, keep the head in the hands to support the weight. Up and tilt. Can we feel something going on in the waist? Sit up and tilt and back and down. And again, sit up and tilt. Would I be pushing our relationship too far to ask for two more? Sit up and tilt and back. One more at home, please. Sit up and tilt and back and take a rest there. If you're finding that easy, you can always do a few more repetitions after we've done. So, we've got a little bit of work for the obliques there. What I'm going to do now is combine those exercises together. So, we've just done our sitting up. We've also just worked with a rotation movement. So what if we can put those together for the ultimate exercise? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a dumbbell. It doesn't have to be a dumbbell. It could be a tin of beans. It could be anything that's a little bit of weight. So I'm going to ask you to take that in your right hand, please. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a sit up and a reach twist. So we're going to sit up and twist this dumbbell across. So lift your left hand for me, please. So the movement here is to sit up and reach the dumbbell across to this side. Okay, so sit up and reach and back and keep going for me, please. Sit up and reach. If you've got a dumbbell, great. If not, any weight. Sit up and reach and back. You'll know if it's too heavy. Sit up. Now, ideally, we're looking for 12 to 15 repetitions on each side, please. Sit up and twist. Beautiful. So now we're getting that work through the upper abdominals and the lower abdominals as we're picking up, but then also through the obliques at the side as we get that twisting movement. Is that about 12 yet? Must be there or thereabouts. And take a quick rest there and we'll switch over to the other side. Just have a quick rest for a second. So we're putting this arm out as a marker to see where we want to be and twisting across. When we come back down, also add the twist so that we're just going down onto this shoulder so that we're really maximizing that rotation through the waist to combine with that sit-up movement. So should we try it on the other side? Beautiful. Dumbbell by the shoulder and up we go and twist. Now when you go down, just put your left shoulder down. Good. See how the right shoulder stays up, just the left shoulder goes down and away we go. Sit up. Beautiful. And down. Sit up. So look for that twist, look for that reach. Good, sit up. A real combination, a compound exercise using lots of different muscle groups here. And the benefit of this as well, by extending the arm, we're getting a little bit of work for the triceps, for the back of the arms. Beautiful. So you'll have fabulous arms as well as an hourglass waist. Up we go. Not that you've not already got that, of course. How are you doing at home? And reach. Can I get a couple more, please? Our target, remember, 12 to 15 repetitions is what we're after. You might need to build up to that. If you find it too easy, you could take a slightly heavier weight. One more, and take a little rest there. Beautiful. I'll take the dumbbell. Thank you. Cool, that is heavy. Pull your knees into your chest and just have a little bit of a rest there. So those are your mobilizer muscles. As you can see there in all of those exercises, we're moving, yeah? We're going to move on now to the stabilizers. These are the muscles that really work to hold your posture in place. And the exercises, as such, then, are slightly different. Let's have a look at those. Let's move on to the stabilizer muscles. So by definition, these are holding your position, particularly your neutral alignment, that comfortable position for the spine, particularly the lower spine. So by definition, they will be isometric muscles. They're not moving, they're just holding the position. And what I'm going to ask you to do first of all is a plank. Now, before we do this, you may have seen the plank done resting onto the forearms. What I'm actually going to ask you to do this time is to go for the full plank. I'm going to challenge you to go into the full position. The reason for this is that what this will do is cause some bone loading. It'll overload through the wrists, which is a good thing because remember we talked about how fitness works, this theory of progressive overload. What we'll do here is start to strengthen the bones in the wrist. Now bear in mind that the wrist is a common fracture site as a result of falls. It's important for us to get some kind of exercise that gives us that bone loading that will develop the bone density. So we're going to go into our plank position first of all, please, Jen. Hands are under the shoulders. I'm going to drop the hips just a little bit for me, please. So we're into that neutral spine or comfortable spine position where we've got that gentle lordotic curve. We're not sticking the backside in the air, we're not dropping the hips down. Gravity here is trying to pull you down, yeah? So what we're doing is pulling in tight through the abdominals, particularly the transversus, the muscle across the middle, but we're also pulling in at the side through the waist, yeah? And take a little rest there. You can rest into child's pose like so to release the pressure, okay? Fabulous. So our challenge here, or your challenge here, is I'm going to take Jen through a progression here, and they'll get a little bit more difficult as we go along each of the exercises. You've got to find the exercise you can do comfortably, and what you're then trying to do is hold the position for as long as you can. It will increase with practice. So we're going to go into our plank position, please. Let's set ourselves up first, and the key here, and this is a really good tip, is to lock on in the middle first of all, engage those core muscles, pull in through the tummy button, pull in through the waist. Excellent. We're pulling up through the pelvic floor also. So we've created this energy in the middle. Keep it fixed, and we'll lift one foot off the floor, please. So the challenge here is, can we hold that position? You'll see now, gravity's really trying to pull you down. You're in a disadvantaged position, but we're keeping the abdominals pulled in tight. Well done, well done. Do you want to take a rest there and drop down onto your knees? So it's important to have a little rest in between. When you get to the point where you start to shake, that's where really we need to have that rest. Okay, so should we move on to the next level? But remember, you just work to the level you're comfortable with. I'm showing you these exercises so you've got some room for progression, somewhere to go. Okay, should we move on to the next one? When I say we, obviously I mean you, because I'm not doing anything at all. Okay, so we're going to drop the hips down slightly, so you've got that natural curve in your lower spine. Perhaps you can use a mirror if you have one handy just to check your position. Could we lift one leg off the floor, please? Could we now lift it slightly out to the side? Now it's getting a little bit tricky because we're trying to keep that pelvis fixed. Yeah, we're trying to keep this lower spine, this lumbopelvic region in our natural neutral alignment. And put it back down and take a little rest. Yeah? So again, looking to just hold the position, and then over time, can we gradually build that up? So that should have felt a little bit more difficult than the one before. Okay, so having done the lower body, should we try something with the upper body? We're back into the plank position, please. And you may be beginning to feel this, which is good, because that means we're getting to that point of overload. So our challenge now, again, is can we stay fixed in the middle? So stay strong in the middle. Can we lift one hand up towards the shoulder without rotating, please? We can do this. Oh, that's a tricky one. And back down. And take a little rest there. Well done. Drop onto your knees. Well done. So the challenge here is, can you fix yourself in position first? Can we really get locked on, and then can we lift the hand? It's not an easy exercise to do. It really isn't very easy. Okay, so should we take that one step further, please? Now, this is a tough exercise, I'll warn you. So we're going into our plank position. We're fixing in the middle, keeping the abs in tight. So this is what we're going to do. I'll let you choose. Can we lift one arm and the opposite leg? Stay fixed in the middle. One more time. That's a really good effort. Go on, one more. Third time lucky. Brilliant. And rest down onto the knees. Excellent stuff. Well done, well done. Have a little rest there. It's a tricky exercise, but it's giving you something to aim for further down the road. And the challenge is there, can you keep the abdominals pulled in really, really tight, the hips in your neutral position when you lift into that difficult lift? So something to aim for there. Okay, let's change things slightly. We're going to go onto our knees, please, but sitting up nice and tall, okay? So you're sitting up tall through the knees. Brilliant. What I'm looking for here is a simple lateral flexion. So we're going to bend to the side. That's all I'm going to ask you to do, take a bend to the side. Brilliant. So we're getting a little bit of work through here. Now there's a possibility that you'll start to feel an arching through the lower spine, a little rotation. This is where our core muscles are beginning to work, because I want you to keep that position fixed and then come back up to the center. Shouldn't feel too difficult, yeah? Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to take one leg out to the side. So if I can turn you so that you're on the mat that way around, brilliant. So if you put that'll do. One leg out to the side. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to bend to the right for me, please. Let the top of your head drop and hold that position there. Now, what we're doing here is working on keeping the abdominals pulled in really tight, yeah? We're stopping ourselves from rotating. We can hopefully feel something going on in the middle, and also what you'll feel particularly in this position is that as the abdominals pull in, they're pulling on what's called the thoracolumbar fascia. It's this structure at the back that's supporting the lower spine. And bring yourself back up to the top, please. Fabulous, just have a quick rest for a second. Now, obviously we do this on both sides, but just for the purpose of today, I'm just gonna go through one side. So, can we go back to that position for me, please? Only this time what I'm gonna ask you to do is lift your hands up above your head. Okay, so hands are up, shoulders are back down, brilliant. Okay, so this is where we go. Stay fixed in the center, engage the core muscles before we move, and then we'll take the lean, please. Lean time, brilliant. We're not twisting through the hips, we're keeping the abs pulled in tight, drawing the tummy button in. We're pulling in through the waist, lifting up through the pelvic floor. Can we feel something going on at the back here? What's happening is those internal obliques and this muscle at the front, the transversus, attached to this sheath at the back, and it's now splinting, supporting the lower spine. That's great, that's what we want. Come back up to the top, have a rest for a quick second, only a quick rest. I feel really cruel doing this to you. Could we take that, please? Same position, same exercise. This is not easy. Now remember, hold it there just for 1 second. The problem with these exercises is they look easy. That just means they're easy to do wrong. So lift the hands up, abdominals are in tight, and we lean to the side and hold it. We're trying to fight the rotation. There should be no rotation, no arching through the lower spine. Keep the abdominals pulled in really tight, back up to the top. Take a rest, and I'll take that dumbbell, you'll be pleased to hear. You're gonna be lying down on your back. Well done, well done. So the aim with all of these exercises is, can we get into the position? They're stabilizers. We're challenging them to hold us in that position. These are postural muscles. So what we're going to do here is lift the hands directly up to the ceiling and the feet directly up as well, please. To start with, I'm going to take the knees bent. So if we can have the knees bent. Fabulous. So all I'm doing here in your lying down position is I'm going to challenge you to maintain your neutral or comfortable spine. Once you start to feel that pulling to the arch, that's the point to stop and go back a level. So we'll start at an easy movement first of all. Be aware of your position in space. Could we just take one hand down behind your head to the floor, please? Just slowly lower it down. Beautiful. And then slowly bring it back up to the top. And can we do the same on the other side? And back up to the top. So what we're doing here, that's a simple exercise, is challenging you. You might begin to feel a bit of an arching going on already. I want you to keep your abdominals in really tight. Also try to keep the neck relaxed. That's fabulous. And take a little rest there at the top. Okay, could we make this slightly more difficult? Could we do the same thing, one foot and then the other? All I'm asking you to do is lower it down to the floor, touch, and back up. You're making this look really easy. So the challenge is, can we keep a neutral, comfortable spine by keeping pulled in, keeping that engagement through the core muscles? And relax. We could make that slightly more difficult. Could we take the legs straight up, please? Brilliant. Okay, so we're looking for our neutral, comfortable spine. There should be a little bit of an arch. Could I ask you to lower slowly the right leg down towards the floor, please? Nice and slow, and hold it, and then back up. So now, and the other leg, we're getting a little bit more of a challenge. And back up on those core muscles, nice and slow, and then back up. Beautiful, hold it there for me, please. Yeah, all the time I'm trying to pull you into this position, you've got to work to pull it in. Could we make it slightly more difficult? Remember, I'm giving you levels you can aim for. So if you're having a go at these and finding them difficult right now, stick with the easier level. This gives you something to aim for. The challenge now is, can we do the opposite arm and leg nice and slowly, please? Slower is better. Try and keep your breathing relaxed and slowly back up and across to the other side. And again, we're feeling now that your back wants to arch, but we're fighting against it. We're keeping the abdominals in tight. We're pulling in through the waist, really working through those core muscles. One more. And then take a rest at the top there. Brilliant. Hold it there for me for a second, please. The idea here, what I'm trying to do is challenge you in a position that you'd never be in. And it's like elite sportsmen will always train harder than they'll perform on the day. What I'm doing here is making you work harder than you would normally need to in your everyday tasks, and that'll ensure you'll be able to accommodate those tasks. Final version. Can we take opposite arm and leg out to the diagonal, please? So, brilliant. Oh, You've been dying to kick me. That was deliberate. And back up to the top. Beautiful. Slow is better. And trust me, Jen's making this look a lot easier than it is. Out to the other side. It's a great exercise. Your challenge, keep your abdominals in tight, work those core muscles to maintain that natural, normal curve in your lower spine. Take a rest down, pull your knees into your chest and give them a hug. Well done, well done. So there's a range of exercises that will work your stabilizers. The idea being that we're really challenging ourselves to hold a position by doing some other exercises. So you have a range of exercises for the mobilizers, for your six-pack muscle and for those obliques at the side. And now you have a range of exercises that'll work for your core muscles on that spinal alignment. So remember, we've got different levels so you can work your way up, and practice makes perfect. Now, if you found those exercises difficult, don't worry, you can build up gradually in terms of the number of repetitions and on those stabilizer exercises in terms of holding the time. So start at a comfortable level, but aim to progress. You'll find as you get stronger, you'll be able to do that. Now, whilst these exercises will, over time, help to firm the muscles and possibly create a slimmer outline through improved posture, leading to you pulling in the tummy, and a point worth mentioning here is that we've all got a great six-pack naturally, but for a lot of us, it's actually hidden in a corpulent cover-up. So don't be fooled by the advertisers' claims of spot reduction. The myth that exercising your abdominals will remove body fat from your problem area. It's not true. A crucial factor in any plan to redefine your body shape is to strip away the body fat that covers your abdominal muscles, which can only be achieved by creating a negative calorie balance. As we've learned, the best way to achieve this is through a combination of cardio exercise and sensible eating. However, there's an important question here that's very rarely discussed. What use is a six-pack? As we saw earlier, the six-pack's achieved by targeting the rectus abdominis muscle with sit-up type exercises. But think about it. How often do you actually need this movement in your everyday tasks? I'm going to guess twice. When you get out of bed in the morning and when you get back into bed to go to sleep at the end of the day. So it's fair to say then that the six-pack muscle is not the most important muscles to get you through the day. It's primarily cosmetic. So I wonder why it's become the omnipresent symbol of fitness that it is. The transversus abdominis, on the other hand, serves to brace your lower spine in essential movements such as pushing, pulling, twisting, lifting, carrying, protecting it from injury and allowing you to generate force in these activities. In conclusion, I'm not suggesting you avoid training the rectus abdominis entirely, but to support my argument that you should devote more time to core stability exercises, think function rather than fashion. Let me put it this way. Our bodies are not a lot different than our primeval ancestors who, to survive as hunter-gatherers, needed very strong core muscles to throw spears and then to drag their spoils home to feast. And I'm pretty sure they didn't spend much time in the cave doing sit-ups.